Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description. Kurama, do you feel anything? And I was so unlucky to end up surrounded. These are clearly not simple Nukenin, if they were able to fool an entire Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox. Disgusting, Kurama. Don't get worked up, Naruto, I'm here. They're somehow blocking my chakra, so it's getting harder to keep an eye on the area. Kurama's voice rang out, slightly vibrating, and therefore not like a normal human voice. And he wasn't human. When did demons become humans? But that doesn't change the fact that he became my friend, the one I'm ready to give my life for. And it warms my heart that he agrees with me on this. Suddenly the earth began to tremble, the treetops began to shake, as if Temari had walked with her fan, and a hum that was impossible to forget, accompanied by it. It was the statue of Shinju in the flesh that moved towards us from another dimension. A couple of jumps on the branches of the tree where I had been sitting waiting until then, and here I was at the top. What I saw shocked me quite a bit around me. About a kilometer in each direction, huge snake-like pillars rose up, from which the chakra of the ten tails simply swelled. How? Naya haha Naruto, did you think I would just let you live in peace? From somewhere behind me, a hissing voice came, in which I recognized the snake Sannin. What, are you surprised? Did you think I would bend over to that old cow Tsunade? You. So this is your doing? It was hard to believe that this snake bastard had fooled everyone again. What are you trying to achieve? You know, I decided to give you a second chance. Let you live in another world, where Obito hasn't yet committed a world massacre, Konoha hasn't been destroyed by the god of pain, and your parents are alive. An interesting option, don't you think? Smiling like a snake, Orochimaru snapped his fingers and two chairs appeared out of thin air. He sat down on one of them and pointed to the other one. I can see from your eyes that you remembered the eternal Tsukiyomi by the ever-memorable Madara. But this is not it. Then what? His proposal was more than interesting, because now our world is more than quiet, and there are no wars in the near future. Everyone is licking their wounds, closing the holes in the budget after such a bloody fourth shinobi world war. Don't you dare lie, Kurama will sense it right away. I didn't plan to. In my experiments, I was able to open one of the wormholes, the size of a coin, which led to a world very similar to ours. But not ours. Nagena saw your parents, saw the fourth Hokage Minato Namikaze and his wife, Kushina Namikaze, the bloody habanero. Is that enough for you to try your luck? He clasped his hands together and waited for my answer. Apparently, he needed me to voluntarily agree to this scam. What's your interest? You've never been a kind grandfather who treats children to rice cakes on Tanabata. What do you mean? This is an experiment. The chances of success are very, very small, so you will have to risk your essence. And he laughed, as if a dozen snakes were hissing at the same time in different voices. So, what is your answer? No, I won't risk it. Old fart, why do you need the Ten Tails chakra? Curiosity, as everyone knows, is not a vice. And I thought you would at least grow up a little. Well, screw you, you don't have a choice anyway. And regarding Jubi's chakra, I wasn't going to launch a snake into that world, but the whole of you, fool. Where did I get so much chakra? So I have to wriggle out of it, he hissed, driving one of the warming snakes off his lap. No, 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 boy. Don't be angry. The world around me instantly darkened, losing its outlines, and as if through cotton wool, I heard Orochimaru's voice. Die. Nagena, clever girl. The sun's rays gently brushed my face, interrupting a strange dream in which Orochimaru offered me to move to a parallel world on his terms, citing the fact that he was interested in the results of this experiment. Isn't that crazy? Opening my eyes, I immediately stared at an unfamiliar ceiling. What? Why the hell am I sleeping outside my home? Did I really get so drunk yesterday that I don't remember anything at all? And I'm having all sorts of strange dreams? Looking around, I saw a very ordinary room, which could belong to either a child or an adult who was not overly ascetic. The walls were covered with light blue wallpaper. In the corner there was a wardrobe and a table with a stack of textbooks on it, the same ones I had when I was studying at the academy. There was a full-length mirror hanging near the window, obviously old and handmade, because no one makes such fancy rims for mirrors anymore. Intrigued, I got out of bed, looking in surprise at my childish pajamas and thin arms and legs. What the hell? How did I fit into these pajamas? And what happened to my arms and legs? Went up to the mirror and stared at my reflection in shock. I am a child again? So it wasn't a dream? Having fallen out of reality for a few minutes, mechanically smoothing my eternally disheveled hair, I looked at myself. Myself, as I was 5 years ago, during my training at the Shinobi Academy. Frozen, I did not even hear the female voice, so familiar and dear, that called me from somewhere below to wake up and go down for breakfast. All the more unexpected for me was the door that swung open with a kick and the cry of the one who was known in Konoha as the Bloody Abaneri, my mother. Naruto, are you completely deaf? What the hell are you staring at in the mirror for? She was truly terrifying in her anger, her hair fluttering like snakes, giving her a truly terrifying appearance. Now go wash up, and be at the table in 2 minutes. Hiroshi already had breakfast and ran off to school, and you're still sleeping and sleeping. On this note she left, calming down and giving herself the appearance of a pretty woman preoccupied with everyday affairs, giving me one last evil glare in my direction. Holy shit, I simply had nothing more to say to all this. The experiment was a success, and I am absolutely sure that now I am the same Naruto whose parents never thought of dying. Orochimaru, you may be a goat, the likes of which you have to look for, but if we cross paths, I owe you a case of beer and naked pictures of Tsunade. I give you my word as a shinobi. Ahem, Naruto, haven't you forgotten anything? A suspiciously gentle voice of my eternal companion, who, it turns out, didn't leave me even in another world, sounded in my head. Kurama, good morning. So you were able to move too? There was no end to the joy, but I refrained from screaming, remembering that I no longer lived alone. You fool, you have a minute left. Don't you remember your mother's character? Run! My friend screamed, worried about me. And indeed, it was time to hurry. I take off my pajamas, change into the familiar red tracksuit with Uzumaki caimans on the back and shoulders, folded right there, run down the stairs and find myself in a short corridor with 2 doors on the right. Opening one of them at random, I find the coveted wash basin and, having quickly washed myself, I again run to the kitchen, led by the wonderful smells of home cooking. Having sat down and started eating, I indulged in my thoughts again. Who is Hiroshi? Maybe my brother? Or, I don't know, I guess I'll figure it out later. It seems that I'm currently studying at the academy, so it would be a good idea to attend classes on time. I had abandoned my bad habits of doing everything to spite everyone in my previous life. Having quickly gobbled up a plate of curry and gulped down a glass of tea, I said goodbye to my mother. She didn't even utter a word in response. Something was wrong here, and ran along the familiar road to school. It turns out that the place where my room used to be, that whole building, was gone. In its place stood our house, a 2-story mansion that looked, albeit not very rich. Knowing my father, I am sure that it was he who opposed all sorts of bas-reliefs and stucco, but solid. Well, a new life awaits me, in which I will try not to make the same mistakes that my past is full of. I will try not to let Sasuke fall into the darkness of hatred and save everyone this time. Having withdrawn into myself, I didn't even notice how I reached the park next to the academy. Oh, how many memories are associated with this place. But I haven't been here since graduation. There hang those swings, on which I often felt sad alone, because no one saw me as myself, but only as a demon fox. And even though the children didn't know the whole background of the situation, they adopted the adults' fear, hatred and pain of loss, and it was good if they simply avoided them. But there were also those who liked to swing their fists. I got it pretty good then. And over there is that very corner where the older children beat me when I stood up for Hinata, the heiress of the Hyuga clan. It was then that I first experienced such feelings as bitterness and anger, because not only was I not thanked for my help, but they even began to hate me more. But I tried not to lose heart, because, as I then believed, Irika-sensei was taking care of me. I considered him a teacher, with a capital letter, but he was simply propagating the will of fire, invented and imposed by a freak politician, the 3rd Hokage. Irika was his protege. Yes, Sasuke told me who gave Itachi the order to destroy the Uchiha clan. And you know, analyzing everything Hiruzen told me during the time I knew him, as well as how I survived as a child, eating normally maybe 3 times a week, while he appointed himself my guardian, and pocketed the lion's share of my allowance. This lying creature is not worthy of respect. If Orochimaru in this world does not kill him, I will have to visit him myself for a cup of tea, paying off the debt. Oh, I got distracted. Somewhere to the right, behind the trees, a group of boys about my age were picking on a girl, making a lot of noise. Of course, I'm not a champion of justice, but I can't pass by such lawlessness, really. Sighing and running through Shikamaru's favorite phrase in my head. How much of a pain in the ass. I stepped toward them, coughing to attract the attention of the underage freaks. Look who's come to us. Naruto, the helpless son of the Hokage, a weakling and a crybaby. Turning around, the boy with a mug that only a brick would agree to kiss, the obvious ringleader of this company, grinned maliciously and began to rant. What, you want to take her place? No problem, just say the word. And even if I do want to, what will you do to me? Will you wave your hand at your hangers-on? I've always been annoyed by people who can't do anything themselves and only incite others to commit rash acts while remaining in the shadows. Well, try it, brat, I'll count all your bones. There's still half an hour before classes, so I'll have time to beat their asses. What do they have and what do I have? There are many of them, but they are not trained to fight, while I have been through the entire Fourth World War. The youngsters will experience the righteous wrath of Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto Namikaze Zahem. Kurama corrected me, knocking all the pathos down to 0. Damn. Guys, beat up the redhead. With this very cry, the brick-faced man, angered by my goading, rushed at me with his fists, and the whole crowd, about 7 people for sure, rushed after him. Events were racing ahead, and if they just wanted to crush me with the crowd, kick me and run away before the adults arrived, I wasn't going to give them a chance to carry out such a stupid plan. I formed a seal with my hands to summon shadow clones, which made them suddenly stop and stare at my fingers in bewilderment. I strained, supplying chakra in such a familiar way, and nothing. So much pathos, but in reality, just zilch. Ugh, looks like I'll have to learn everything all over again. Fortunately, I have the knowledge, and now, run. Fortunately, over the years of running from such bastards in my past life, I knew this little park well, and never complained about my memory. And I ran fast, of course, not as fast as the same Rock Lee and others from the older generation, but certainly faster than some hooligans. So, turn right here, 3 meters past a broken tree, turn right again, and go straight ahead, pushing through the bushes, straight to the academy. There are 15 minutes left before classes, time is running out, so I wouldn't want to be held up by some idiots and get an undeserved scolding. I hope that girl managed to run away. Having reached the academy, I slowed down a bit and, having calmed my breathing, entered the auditorium and stopped next to a free seat at the desk of the offspring of the Aburame clan, who used to scare me a lot, but having worked together, all fear faded into the background, leaving only confidence in my comrade. Plus, the fact that the Aburame clan does not go under the Sarutobi family kind of hints that having such a person as a friend is also beneficial. The class, which had instantly gone silent, looked warily in all directions, afraid to look me in the eye, with the exception of a couple of assholes who were almost openly mocking me. I don't remember them in our last class. Impudence, as they say, is the second happiness? Shino-kun, do you mind if I sit next to you? I asked, not fawning, but not expressing aggression either. I don't mind if you like this place, he answered in his favorite manner. I never understood him completely, but it was always interesting to hear what he would do this time. Having sat down, I realized that I had forgotten my textbooks at home, but looking around, I was convinced that I was not the only one. Everyone's desks were pristine. And only then did I think to look at the calendar under the clock hanging above the board. It turns out that today is the 1st of August, the beginning of the school year, and judging by the appearance of my classmates, it is the graduation year. In any case, everyone is dressed in the same uniform as in the photo of our graduation from my past life, except for those 2 bastards whom I do not remember. While I was thinking, the time for classes to start approached, and exactly a second before that, Irika burst into the classroom. I just can't bring myself to call him Irika-sensei. Fanatics are fanatics. Having glared angrily first at my indifferent face, then at those 2, he went behind his desk and, having laid out the folders with the students' personal files, looked around the entire classroom, calming down. Children, welcome to the academy. This is the final year, so during it, various tests for professional suitability will be conducted, based on the results of which the committee will decide whether to leave you for a second year or allow you to take the exams for the title of genin. He continued with a feigned affectionate squint. This especially concerns Namikaze Naruto, Hashina Kami, and Araki Kato. Do not disgrace your families and try to pass everything. Having said all this, he walked out the door to return in the company of Mizuki, the same teacher who made me steal the Hokage scroll. That's when I learned the shadow clone technique. So I'm even partly grateful to him, but if the opportunity arises, I'll still try to finish him off. Someone like him has no place in Konoha. Children, starting this year, Mizuki-sensei, appointed by Hokage-sama to replace the retired Ayasudano, will be your intern. Please do not create problems for him and obey him in everything that concerns classes. Mizuki-sensei is a qualified Chunin shinobi. He can teach you a lot if you behave appropriately. And he stared at me again, as if I was the cause of all the troubles at the academy. Now we will check if you have forgotten the material you covered over the holidays. Pretending to run his finger over the magazine, I can see it in his eyes. Mizuki stared somewhere at the back of the class and called out a name that I didn't expect to hear. Uchiha Sasuke, please come out and demonstrate Henge Dash. You should have taken it at the end of last year. Zero reaction from the class. Sasuke did not get up, did not show his gloomy face to the people simply because he was not here today. Well, since Sasuke is not with us today, Namikaze Naruto, replace your comrade and demonstrate to us your undoubtedly magnificent mastery of this technique. Feeling problems in one place, I slowly walked to the board, stood in a stance and folded my hands into a seal. To give the chakra, which for some reason went crazy like a disobedient animal, to form a form and throw its matrix on myself. Not enough control. What the hell is this? I'll help. Kurama's cry gives me strength, then white chakra mixes with my blue. Wait, white? Why the hell is it white? Okay, I'll figure it out later. Concentrate on creating the technique, assemble the matrix again, imagining my father as he was when he suppressed the eighth tail in the battle with the pains. With force, as if overcoming some barrier, I pull the matrix onto myself. With a pop, I change my appearance to my father's and appear before the surprised faces of my classmates and the dumbfounded mugs of the teachers. It seems they know something that I don't. Am I free? I asked, trying to calm the storm inside me, but not revealing myself to others, knowing the answer in advance. Yes, Naruto, you can be free for today. Mizuki pulled himself together, his face slightly pale, and glancing at the magazine, he said with much more confidence. Inuzuka Kiba, to the board. I didn't wait for the end of classes and simply left the building where future shinobi are being carefully brainwashed. And even the fact that the Hokage post is occupied not by the third, but by the fourth, my father, doesn't change anything on the political board. He is still part of the third's faction. Well, since I have some free time, I should at least partially think about what to do next. How should I live? Remembering the third's artifact, a crystal ball through which he can see and hear everything that the omnipresent birds flying over Konoha see and hear, I didn't sit around somewhere on the street, so as not to arouse the suspicions of the paranoid old man, and headed to one of the baths scattered throughout the settlement. I was very lucky that today was a men's day, Thursday, because I had already forgotten about the division of the week into men's and women's days. It had been so long since I had been on them, I had no time. First training under Kakashi-sensei, then training with old man Jiraiya, and then the war began, and there was no time for bath days at all. Having reached my destination, I paid for the visit from my favorite frog wallet. It turns out that in this world I had one, and not something else, and I was given pocket money, went into the changing room and undressed, carefully examining my body. My arms and legs are much thinner and weaker than my past self. I noticed this morning, although it's still morning now, ahem. But you get the idea, right? And there are no stripes on my cheeks at all. Does this mean that I'm not a Jinchuriki in this world? Then who did the world consider Kurama to be? The questions keep piling up, and I'm unlikely to get answers to them anytime soon. I can't lie down on Orochimaru's lab table for the sake of a ghostly chance to learn at least something? So, let's continue. Fresh abrasions on my forearm and thigh, which is not surprising. That casually thrown phrase of that kid told me a lot. It turns out that they consider me someone like Konohamaru, but more helpless, if not useless. And they often beat me, envious of the fact that my father is Hokage and that I was lucky to be born in this family. Lost in my thoughts, I didn't even notice how I reached an onsen, a natural pool with hot water, around which all baths were built back in the days of the first Hokage. My body itself remembered what to do in such places, and I automatically lowered myself into the hot water, without being distracted from my thoughts. And it turns out that I have a brother, either older or younger. I still haven't figured it out. It would be good if he were younger than me, then there would be a chance to raise him not on the propaganda of the third, but as a real person. Although I myself do not fully understand what it means to be a person. Perhaps this is my chance to understand myself and those around me? An interesting hypothesis, though. But what to do next with the third? With the parents? Kushina, my mother, was not at all happy to see me in the morning, and did not even wish me luck in my studies. Is she ashamed of me? Ignores me? Hates me? Questions. I wonder, what kind of relationship do I have with my father? Or does he also just quietly ignore his son? Who, if not disgraces the Namake's family name with his mediocrity, then something close to it? Why do I feel so bad? Maybe I should just try to prove to them that they're all wrong? No, that's not it. Maybe I should prove to them that they're wrong? That's probably the only sensible thought I've had all day. By the way, since we're already on this tangent, maybe I should find out what Mizuki and Irika know about. They're clearly well informed about the reasons for my lack of talent. It would also be nice to change the bright red suit for something more inconspicuous. Am I a shinobi, or just out for a walk? And I need to do something with my hair. Of course, I like the red color, but against the background of foliage it stands out as too noticeable a spot, so the enemy will easily be able to spot its wearer, that is, me. Should I dye it something less provocative? Black or something. It would be nice, in general. I should do it soon, but for now. Should I rest before the hard work? Yes, I think I'll rest. The water is just perfect, there's no one around. Only a plump woman sits outside, at the entrance to the onsen, who accepted my money to pay for my stay here. Kurama, are you awake? Yes, I somehow forgot about my friend, stunned by the change of scenery. You'll fall asleep here when your head is just bursting with thoughts. Don't you want to look into your inner world? He grumbled, immediately interesting. He never invited people over just like that, there was always some pretext for it. There's something rather strange here. And I'm strange. Okay, give me a couple of seconds. Concentrating, I began to go deeper and deeper into myself. Fortunately, there were still about 40 minutes of the paid time left. I closed my eyes to ease the process, and almost instantly found myself sitting in the inner world. At least this ability remained with me, untouched by the transfer from another world. I open my eyes and immediately squint slightly. There is no trace left of that prison with the water eternally standing knee-deep. I remember seeing the same thing when my father's chakra, sealed in the nine-tailed, helped seal the 8 tails of the Kyuubi. A room completely made of light shimmering with rainbow shades, in the center of which on a mat lay a snow-white fox cub with 9 tails and black stripes on its muzzle. Kyuubi? It's you, Kyuubi? I was stunned, I couldn't even speak normally. Well, who else, blockhead? Of course me. Yawning amusingly, the baby stretched his front paws forward, stretching his stiff body. Who else did you expect to see here? But why are you all white? And so small? Still not having recovered from the initial shock, I was not ready to believe in such an obvious thing as the fact that the transfer had affected not only me, but also Lise. I don't know why it's white and small, because it's more convenient. Think about it, what is it like to exist in the form of a huge colossus, and how much effort is needed to simply wave one tail? Jumping off the bed, which immediately disappeared, Kyuubi came up to me, jumped up and sat on my shoulder, and continued to broadcast directly into my ear. Previously, the seal prevented me from taking a convenient form for existence, but now it is gone, and here I am. By the way, regarding the color, my chakra used to be demonic, but now its polarity has changed. So you're not a demon anymore? Then who are you? With a puzzled expression on my face, I clearly didn't look my best, But it is what it is. Part of you, idiot. And in theory, the smarter part, since you are so mercilessly stupid. Now mine has been added to your chakra, and their division is rather arbitrary, with the only exception that the blue chakra is replenished many times faster than the white. That is, your chakra can now be divided into fast and slow reserves. And the white is much more concentrated, therefore, with the same efforts to create a technique, using the white chakra you can increase its power several times. Not bad. Could you check if I have any other seals? Remember, Orochimaru once put one on me, preventing my chakra from circulating normally. And I suspect that I have something similar on me now. No, really, there was a certain irregularity in my body, as if someone had long ago limited the potential of a certain Riziki knew. Yes, right now, concentrating and clinging to my shoulder with his claws, the fox shuddered with his whole body and shuddered. Opening his eyes, he looked at me strangely and answered. At first glance, nothing special. At the second, in general, too. But at the third, someone comparable in power to Obito cast a deconcentrating jutsu, which only has a couple of years left to live, that is, until your 13th birthday. But if you want, you can throw it off earlier, but it will take a lot of strength, and I will not be restoring the reserve of white chakra for 1 month. In addition, during this time I will have to fall asleep so that the process is not so painful, first of all for you. Okay, I'm ready for it. We need to start training now, but if this seal gets in the way, they won't be of much use, I continued, wincing as if from a toothache. It's just a pity that you'll fall asleep. It's boring without you. After patting him on the ear, I sat down on the floor in the meditation pose that the toad old man had taught me on Mount Maiboku, and began to concentrate my chakra for the same technique with Kurama. Shackling release. I had learned it from a scroll I had found in the ruins of my destroyed homeland, Yuzushiogakure, a village hidden in the whirlpool. The fox meanwhile jumped off my shoulder and curled up on my knees, also concentrating chakra in all 9 tails. When everything was ready, we simultaneously shuddered, releasing a huge amount of accumulated chakra in a single impulse. The world around shook, the room with Kurama disappeared, only to be replaced a second later by a strange lightness in my whole body. Yes, I was thrown out of my inner world back into reality, and jumping to my feet, completely unembarrassed by the fact that I was basically in my negligee, I rushed into the dressing room, quickly changed and ran out into the street. I wanted to scream with joy. The technique, never tested in my past life, worked as it should. And without wasting time, I headed to the forest behind the city wall to test my current powers. The chakra was seething, not letting me calm down, and the forgotten feeling of faith in myself and my powers returned, as if it had never gone anywhere. Well, let's go ahead, towards training logs and feats. Having reached the gates of the settlement, unnoticed by Izumo and Kotetsu, the eternal observers and guards, he made his way outside, immediately turning left and walking along the wall for about 200 meters, and went deeper into the forest itself. 5 minutes of walking, and finally a clearing convenient for training, hidden from all eyes, was found. Well, let's get started. In half an hour, having cleared the ground of small and not so small branches, stones and other debris, I got ready, took a prone position and, concentrating chakra in my arms and legs, began to do push-ups. And what did you think? I would move straight to techniques. No way, until your body is ready, no techniques. So push-ups, pull-ups, squats and run until I lost consciousness. Exhausted after the first approach of 22 push-ups, I tried to catch my breath, which I managed to do after a minute. Having done 18 in the second approach and 12 in the third, respectively, I realized that everything was very, very bad, and if I wanted to present myself as something more than just a piece of meat when I graduated from the academy, I would have to put in a lot of effort. Without wasting time, I started doing squats, stopping at 50 for the first set and gradually reducing their number with each subsequent one. In the end, I did about 205 sets, stopping at 37. Having completed the preliminary training, he began to rub his limbs, removing lactic acid from the muscles, massaging his limbs and circulating chakra throughout his body. Oh, I miss Sage Mode, I miss it! I wish I could sign the contract with the Toads as soon as possible, but alas, old man Jiraiya would only show up in Konoha right before the Chunin exam. So, cast aside regrets and continuing to concentrate chakra in parts of the body it must get used to being fed by it. Fold your hands into the seal of summoning shadow clones. With an effort of will, form an impulse in the chakra and, sharply dissipating it, pronounce the phrase activator of the technique. Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 week, in terms of chakra feeding, material clones appeared around me. And I tell you, it was a success. Even in the morning, the henge caused a lot of problems, but now, after only 5 hours, I am able to use shadow clones. Damn, I can feel like a new Madara. They say he was also a genius. Well, I think I should finish training for today. I really don't have much chakra left, just enough for one use of the Rasengan, if I remember correctly how much chakra it requires, which I won't have, so it's decided, hands in hands and go home. And on the way I can stop by Tuchi-san's and try the local ramen. The old man in my past life replaced my grandfather, feeding me for free during especially hungry times, and why not visit him at least now? It's decided. Onward to the magnificent pork ramen. Having made my way into Konoha unnoticed, passing by the hospital towards Ichiraku, I witnessed a very strange scene. Uchiha Sasuke, the one who was simply destined to become my friend again, all in bandages and white hospital clothes, was crawling out of a window on the 3rd floor, risking breaking his neck. Should I insure the fool or something? And indeed, I came up to him just in time. With a heart-rending scream, he breaks away from the window opening, catching his bandage on the window frame, and falls right into my arms. Well, it was in vain that I tried to catch him, somehow forgetting about the frailty of my current body. In the end, we both lie on the ground, me with my head dazed from the blow with my plastered arm, he from the shock he experienced and the pain in his open wounds. Well, at least I softened his fall. By the way, it's strange, I don't remember Sasuke spending his senior year in a hospital bed. Having finally come to my senses and looking at him, I saw a face full of despair and hatred. And this hatred was not directed at me, no. Rather at myself. The hatred of my own helplessness, so familiar to me. So, in this world, too, an order was given to neutralize the Uchiha clan. So, this time, too, Itachi-san became a missing nin, advocating for the prosperity of Konoha. Sad. But fixable, because, knowing the past Itachi, it is quite possible to establish contact with the current one. And then Sasuke's hatred can be redirected to the 3rd and his political friends, having first talked with his father. Well, there are many plans, but how and when to implement them is a real challenge. Meanwhile, Sasuke came to his senses, looked around and noticed me, just like him, lying on the ground. Naruto? But why? Sasuke looked very, very attractive, clearly surprised, although it was unclear why exactly. If I were a girl, I would definitely have lassoed him, Naya. What do you mean why? Are you suicidal? Who would try to descend from such a height without safety equipment? Yeah, I overdid it with the emotional message, but not by much. Didn't they teach you the slightest safety precautions? They taught me, I just... Okay, stop, why the hell am I making excuses? Already surprised at himself, Sasuke continued. Thanks for the help and go to hell, that's it. Bye, Naruto. And he walked back to the hospital, limping on his right leg and stroking his ribs on the left side. Something in this world had clearly died. Too fast a change of scenery. Well, at least with this Sasuke clearly won't be bored. He always kept saying, I don't have a dream, I only have a goal. Blah blah blah. Boring. Anyway, okay, let's move to Ichiraku, without being distracted by anything else, in order to taste this divine dish. Yum. Having reached his destination, which turned out to be Ichiraku ramen, without any particular adventures along the way, he greeted old man Tuchi, who was not the only one preparing his wonderful ramen in many delicious variations today. I am, the daughter of the venerable chef, was working nearby for the benefit of the family establishment, not much inferior to him in terms of cooking and gradually even surpassing him in skill. There were no customers at all, and I took a seat at the edge in proud solitude, ordering a double portion of regular ramen with pork. While waiting, while Tuchi-san cooked the noodles without making a single unnecessary movement during the time he has been working in the ramen shop, cooking has become a skill performed on absolute automatism. I am, smiling sweetly, decided to entertain the only customer in the afternoon with a conversation. Naruto-kun, it's been a while since you dropped by. How are you doing in your studies? Her eyes were so interested that even a hardened cynic like me believed it. Not bad, I am-san. Today was the first day of school at the academy. I'm already in my last year, and at the end of the year I'll finally become a genin. And I was able to perform henge today, can you imagine? Noticing a bird looking at me with a sideways glance on the roof next to the ramen shop, I played the role of a child convincingly, so that not even a shadow of suspicion from the third would fall on such a weak person as me. And even if he wasn't involved in this feathered miracle, as they say, Shinigami protects those who are careful. It's true, you're slowly catching up with your peers. Soon you'll become really strong, and then it won't be long before you reach the Hokage post. She stopped mid-sentence, as if she was scared of something, but then pulled herself together. An ordinary person wouldn't have noticed such a trifle, but I'm not ordinary. Did it seem to me, or did she accidentally blurt out something unnecessary? Well, it seems that even with this eatery, not everything is as simple as it seemed at first glance. Too bad. Well, I'm not aiming for the Hokage post. I'd like to make friends first, and pretend to look sad. If they have the slightest relation to the third's group, they are definitely aware of everything that happens to me. I can't make any more mistakes by filtering everything I say. Meanwhile, listening to the conversation, Tucci finished cooking the ramen and placed 2 deep bowls with the steaming culinary miracle in front of me. Having said, "Itadakimasu," I began to devour the food, and even the fact that one portion is designed for an adult shinobi, and I ordered 2, does not mean anything. I gave it my all during training, and before that, throwing off that strange jutsu from myself, I spent simply enormous reserves of chakra, which will be restored for more than 1 month even with the vaunted Uzumaki regeneration, which was passed on to me from my mother's side. In the blink of an eye, having swept everything that Tucci-san had prepared off the table, full, I thanked him and stood up and headed home. It was already slowly approaching evening, and it would be nice to at least check in that I had come home from school, and not wander around the settlement like a homeless child. After all, now I have someone to return to, and it doesn't matter at all how they treat me, I'll survive. The main thing is how I treat them, right? Having reached home, I took off my shoes in the foyer and went to the kitchen, where an unfamiliar guy a little older than me was sitting and my mother was bustling about. My father was still nowhere to be seen. Apparently, this was the same Hiroshi, my older brother, whom my mother mentioned this morning, bursting into my room. And not bad, even cute, girls like them much more than fatal handsome men. Simply because it is much easier with them. Behind them you feel like you are behind a stone wall. A striking example of this is the grown-up Abirame Shino, with whom I sat at the same desk today. No, seriously, I have never met a more unshakable person than him. So, my brother had blood-red hair, like my mother, blue eyes, like a clear sky, and soft dimples on his cheeks, which stood out even more when he smiled, which gave him cuteness. "Good evening, Mom, Hiroshi." I began first to avoid an awkward silence, and the reactions of 2 people close to me were as different as heaven and earth. Kushina simply glanced at me indifferently, and my brother, I always dreamed of an older brother, raising his head from the scroll with the familiar seal, smiled warmly and greeted. "Hello, Naruto. How was your first day of school?" And I didn't feel any falseness in him at all. I really was that little brother he took care of from an early age, while my parents simply ignored me. It felt so warm inside. Great. I was finally able to use henge, but jutsu, the teachers were just stunned. Well, really, I really wanted to brag, to show off in front of him. After that, they even let me go from school, so I went to train. Cool. Where did you train? All training grounds are open only to shinobi with the rank of genin, and such a slightly nasty grin, at the same time not containing any negativity, as if he did not condemn at all, but was obliged to scold. "Remember, Naruto, it is dangerous to train alone. What if something happens, and who will help you then?" Yes, I know. Embarrassed, for some reason I blushed, and decided to quickly get the hell out of my room in order to sort out my attitude towards this essentially stranger. I had a bite to eat at Ichiraku, so I'm not hungry. I'm going home. And along the road, which I still remember from waking up in the morning, I went up to the 2nd floor, to my room, to fall tiredly, without undressing, into bed. So what should I do with my brother? Accept him, or distance myself? Or maybe try to pull him over to my side in the confrontation with the third and Danzo? Well, in the long run it is quite possible, if by that time he is not lassoed into the root. Okay, we can leave that for later. Now I need to make a plan for tomorrow, what, where and when to do and how much money I will need for it. So let's begin. First, buy a new uniform. This one is too noticeable, so it's advisable to switch to black. Secondly, dye my hair black. No, seriously, with black hair I'll look really cute. And it'll be a good help in my work as a shinobi. Thirdly, I need to refresh my knowledge from textbooks. I remember a lot, but not because I studied something in a past life, but because I went through the school of war, which does not forgive lazy people and truants, and if fail, is lethal in it. But this is not for tomorrow, but for today, so now we gather our strength and begin to study. So, the minimum plan was made, and getting out of bed, he went to the table to take the top textbook from the stack. The Art of Shinobi War, by Tobarama Senju, that's what the ascetic cover said. Well then, a shinobi must rely only on himself. All elements that hinder the fulfillment of the mission must be eliminated immediately. This is the essence of a shinobi. The mission is above all. This is the quote from Tobarama that the textbook began with. Interesting already. I was so engrossed in reading that I didn't even notice how night had come. I fell asleep with a book under my head, sitting at my desk, fully dressed. I woke up a bit early even for myself, grown up. According to my internal clock it was now about 5 a.m. The sun hadn't even thought of appearing above the horizon. The sky was a gray-black blotch. It was completely covered with clouds. It was frowning, as if it didn't understand why the hell one impudent time traveler suddenly decided to change the story written by time itself, breaking the entire plot of the production at its roots. And I was in solidarity with the sky, but I will not retreat in any case. Now this is my life, and how to live it is up to me. So enough philosophizing. I woke up not because of this lofty nonsense, but for a more ordinary reason. My cheek was sore. Yes, I fell asleep reading The Art of War right on the table. Yes, I am a fool with a dented face and disheveled red hair. My head is buzzing quite a bit, which is very strange, because I did not drink yesterday. And drinking at such an age is somehow questionable, to be honest. Ahem. I get up and, like a zombie, walk past the mirror and wave at my reflection, leave the room and head to the bathroom to wash up, freshen up and generally perform the morning ritual of humanization. Having finished with the business in the White Horse's stall, I went to the kitchen to grab something before the academy. Mom hadn't woken up yet. I didn't feel my father's chakra in the house. I guess I stayed overnight at work. The life of a Hokage is hard. Hiroshi was also still asleep, and so the entire kitchen was at my disposal. I opened the refrigerator, in which I found huge stocks of various products: milk, cheese, sausages, vegetables, fish, various sauces. The list can be continued almost indefinitely, because the space inside the refrigerator was expanded with the help of Fuinjutsu, and it was more of a warehouse for food than just a refrigerator. Without taking anything, I closed the door and began rummaging through the cabinets hanging on the walls. Spices, plates, cutlery, tea sets, cereals. Oh, I found it. Instant noodles in a hermetically sealed package. Food of the gods, as for me, and let anyone who says otherwise choke on their saliva. I quickly heat up the stove, put the kettle on to boil, and in the meantime open the convenient package, taking out the spices. I'm too lazy to look for a knife, so, using my fond to pry the edge, I tear the package with the spices and pour them into the noodles. The smell is wonderful, reminiscent of pepper and spices, driving an inexperienced cook crazy. Enjoying the aroma, I waited until the water boiled and poured boiling water over the pasta with a clear conscience. Steam began to pour out of the deep plastic plate. In fact, the packaging consisted of it and the lid, which I had previously removed, and putting it on the window to cool down a little, I went out into the hallway and took a prone position. You need to accustom your body to daily exercise, otherwise I will remain frail and as if I had been underfed in childhood. So, the student's salvation had already cooled down, and it was time to eat. Quickly, in a couple of dozen seconds, he threw the noodles into himself, washed them down with broth and threw the package into the trash can, which was found in one of the lockers standing on the floor. Having thanked himself for the early breakfast, he went for a run, and, in order not to return, he immediately grabbed his textbooks with him. Breathing evenly, trying to run chakra up and down his body while running to improve control, he was happy with the weather. It was cool, but at least it wasn't hot, as it usually was in Konoha. Clouds could only scare housewives and children, especially since there was no sign of rain. Ideal weather for self-improvement. I was exhausted after about 20 minutes of running at an increased pace, which is a very, very good result, not comparable to my past self, of course, but still. I can work on this. All that's left is to improve my endurance, and here's a ready shinobi. This makes me incredibly happy, honestly. I don't want to be a burden to my future team, and I have no doubt that I'll pass the exams with flying colors. He pulled up near a shop with shinobi clothing and stopped, wondering if they could be open at such an early hour. It looked like they could. Some missions ended at night, and the next ones started early in the morning, and in order to have the opportunity to replenish supplies and or change some of the equipment, such establishments should be open around the clock. Coming closer, I saw a light burning inside and, no longer straining myself, I pulled the door towards me, going inside. Behind the counter sat a sleepy young lady, who slightly perked up from the ringing of the bells hanging above the door and smiled at me as a potential buyer. "Welcome. How can I help you?" "Hello? I need to completely change my suit to something less flashy, say black. Can you help me choose the right clothes?" Slightly embarrassed, but there was a very nice lady behind the counter, a little older than my past self. I got straight to the point. "What a serious shinobi, though." She laughed. "Do you have a protector? Or haven't you received it yet? I'll help you, don't be angry." I've already gotten out of the habit of such an attitude, to be honest. That's probably why she considered my indifference to be anger. I took out my wallet, showed some money, and we began to examine the sets of clothes, immediately discarding those that were not in my size. I liked 2 suits consisting of shorts and a sleeveless jacket. Absolutely black in color, they were like copies of each other, differing only in 2 things in thermoregulation and price. The one with climate control cost almost all my money. I only had enough for hair dye, and even that was not guaranteed to be enough. The simpler one cost half as much, but it was not a shinobi combat suit, but rather reinforced clothing that would not even protect against a kunai. Without a second's hesitation, he put the money on the counter for a more expensive version of the suit. Life, you know, is more valuable than money, and having changed on the spot behind a screen specially installed for this purpose near the wall of the store, he headed to the academy to wait for the start of a new school day. Having reached the academy building, I sat down on a bench and waited. I still had a long wait ahead of me, so I could return to the eternally postponed question, what should I do with my older brother? He clearly doesn't wish me harm, and perhaps our relationship used to be like Itachi and Sasuke's, before the massacre, of course, but now that Naruto's not is gone, and there is me. To begin with, I guess I need to find out which Chunin or Jounin he's assigned to and which team he's on missions with. And if possible, establish friendly relations with his team and sensei. Damn, I hate being hypocritical, but I'll have to. Anything for the future. It would be nice to organize joint training with him, especially since he hinted at something like that last night. Okay, stop. Training. And what's stopping me from sending a shadow clone to the academy and working on the physical base that I need so much? That's right, nothing. I jump up from my place, forming the seal of summoning clones in mid-jump and straining myself, pour 2/3 of a rather large reserve into the clone. Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu. Now the clone will be able to not only sit through lectures during the day, but also do practical assignments, and won't be dispelled by the first strong push. Damn, I'm a genius! Why didn't I think of this before? And by the way, there was no need for it before, so I can be forgiven. Although Kurama would probably laugh at me. I wonder how he is there? As I thought, it's boring without him. I really miss that sarcastic fox face, with his idiotic jokes and taunts. He really has become more important to me than all those comrades who remained in the past world, probably with the exception of Sasuke and perhaps Sakura. Well, there's no need to reflect now. Cheer up, Naruto. I tried to drive away the approaching depression out loud, but it turned out very badly. Well, as old man Jiraiya used to say, hard work miraculously cures all the nonsense in the head. And since that was the case, I quickly sat the clone down on the bench instead of myself, outlined the minimum task for him, and breaking into a run, headed for the exit of Konoha. Now that I've sorted out the shadow clones, it's time to move on to the Rasengan, at least the simplest version of it, because I don't have any attacking techniques as such yet. And if I recall my past life, already on the first serious mission we'll have to face one of the swordsmen of the mist, Zabuza, and his boy assistant, whom I once mistook for a beautiful girl. Foo. I'd like to surprise a little the pompous blockhead who took on the order of the semi-gangster riffraff. Having reached the gate, he stopped to catch his breath and observe a beautiful picture. The gate guards, like little children, were sleeping at their posts. And these were elite shinobi? And also, I remember, these two idiots caused a lot of problems for the genin before the exam for the title of Chunin. Laughable and nothing more. Having calmly passed through the gate arch, without even hiding, I found myself outside Konoha territory and went to a narrow river. It was there that Jiraiya and I signed my summons with the toads, flowing half a kilometer from the settlement. Before the Rasengan. It is worth restoring the skills of walking on water and vertical surfaces. This skill is at least useful. At most, mastering it can cost my life or the enemy's, depending on the situation. Having finally reached the shore, I stripped down to my boxer shorts and, feeding chakra into my feet, calmly walked to the middle of the rather fast-moving river, falling 25 centimeters under the water. No, the river is not that shallow, it's just that my chakra control leaves much to be desired. That's what I'll do first. Sitting down right in the water, without stopping to supply chakra to the entire lower part of the body, I concentrated and quickly made calculations in my mind. With such an expenditure on maintaining the position above the water, my remaining chakra will be enough for about 20 hours, then I will have to return to the shore and meditate. But I do not plan to sit here for so long, so everything is just fine. So, focus on your inner self and go into a state close to meditation, slowly falling deeper and deeper into calm and peace, into the darkness surrounding me, in which there is only me and my goal, to regain control over the chakra as quickly as possible. Or is it not only that? Suspicion crept into my soul, its sticky paws penetrating into its most secret corners, and, as if to confirm it, a deafening roar was heard from all sides, containing so much primal rage and ten-tailed chakra that from surprise and horror I fell into reality, losing concentration and falling under the water. Okay, calm down, concentrate and float up, working your arms and legs, climb onto the shore and shaking all over, pull your knees up to your chest and hug them with your hands, trying to calm the trembling. What was that? What kind of monster is inside me? Did Orochimaru screw up somewhere during the transfer? Or is this a gift from the body of Naruto here? Naruto? What was that roar? Kurama's worried voice burst into my head. What the hell happened while I was sleeping? And why do I feel the Ten-Tails chakra? And in response to him there was only silence. There was not a single thought in his head, and only the echo of the scream of a monstrous roar continued to bounce off the walls of the brain, intensifying and intensifying the feeling of horror. Naruto! 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 Kurama was still screaming, but I didn't hear. The world was being smoothly swallowed by darkness, and savingly it didn't let me fall into the abyss of madness. I disconnected from reality completely, falling unconscious on the sandy shore. I woke up from shaking and constant pressure drops, as if I was being thrown up and down. Having come to my senses a little, I realized that someone was carrying me in their arms, moving rapidly in jumps across Konoha. Opening my eyes, I stared in shock at the face of my father. Minato Namikaze, slightly older than my memories, and apparently concerned about my condition, was purposefully carrying his son somewhere. Dad, I croaked, as if I were dying. It felt like I was dying, honestly, every bone ached. Naruto! Father stopped and turned his gaze to my face. What happened? I found you lying unconscious on the shore, and outside the walls of Konoha. Do you remember anything? Well, I trained and then... No, I don't remember, I cheated a little, looking away. It's still unclear how my father feels about me, whether he's the third smut or an independent player. Trained outside of Konoha? Are you completely crazy? It must be funny to watch from the sidelines as the Hokage himself scolds his half-witted son. Why did you even go there, and what's with the academy? Are you skipping classes? At first I wanted to switch to the imposed tone of conversation, but quickly changed my mind, exhaled and began to explain in a calm voice. No, I'm not skipping. I sent a shadow clone to classes at the academy, which in a couple of minutes should exhaust the invested chakra reserve and transfer to me all the knowledge accumulated during the day. And I train there only because inside the village the training grounds are accessible only to shinobi with the rank of genin and above. Without making any excuses, I explained my position to Yellow Lightning in a cold, hoarse from overexertion voice. It's not my fault that Konoha has such stupid rules. Stunned by such a change in his own son, Minato did not know what to answer, and so we simply headed home in silence. On foot, both of us, even though I was pleased by the attention, I still did not trust my father, and moving in a suspended state was a dubious pleasure. Almost reaching the house, my father suddenly turned into one of the gateways, and I followed him. It was all the more unexpected to see at the exit a low spreading tree and a small, barely noticeable bench at its foot, almost completely hidden from the outside world by the tree's crown. Sitting down on the edge, my father made an inviting gesture, patting the surface nearby with his palm. I didn't try to be stubborn and sat down as well. So tell me. A tense face, sky blue serious eyes looking at me with interest and a half smile that invites conversation. What exactly should I tell you? I really didn't know where to start. Not with being in a time warp, for fuck's sake. Well, for example, how do you know the shadow clones technique when you spent 3 years trying to master the damn henge, which is why you were considered a complete failure? An eyebrow raised questioningly, and the same benevolent interest in the eyes. Oh, come on! The Hokage's scroll. I think it will tell you a lot, Dad. It will be funny to watch his reaction. And indeed, it did not take long to come amazement, mixed with poorly concealed pride, like, My son did this! Smoothly flowing into thoughtfulness. So, we've sorted that out. Why can't you take the exams at the academy as an external student? Apparently, asking the question at random made me think seriously. And really, why? Oh, I get it. So, well, first of all, everyone who takes exams not according to the approved plan is under the control of Umbu, and I don't want to go there. Secondly, the distribution to teams will be at the end of the year, and since I'm not going to Umbu, I'll have to wait anyway. Thoughtfully wrinkling my forehead, I tried to find a couple more reasons, but dug up only one, and even that was rather dubious. Well, and thirdly, I don't want to attract unnecessary attention to myself. Shinobi act from the shadows, you yourself always taught me that way. Okay, I agree with that, for example. But why didn't you come to me right away and ask for permission to access the training grounds? Now that's where I really got stuck. Would that have been possible? No, seriously, I never even thought about it, damn it. At the very least, it's reckless of you to leave the village. Criminals could attack from outside, and what can you do to them with your clones, not having been properly trained to fight against qualified shinobi? Forgive me, father, I didn't think. And what else could I say in response to the rebuke? It's shameful. It's okay. He patted my head with his strong hand. You'll be smarter from now on, right, son? I will, I drawled, looking fascinated at the hair falling from my head. Snow white. So there was no need to dye my hair, it changed color itself, even though I didn't want it to. Rising to his feet, my father offered me his hand, and together we finally headed home. It had been a difficult day, and even though I had been unconscious for most of it, the intensity of the events was alarming. What kind of puppeteer was playing this game, and how would the game end? Oddly enough, there was no one at home, so as soon as I stepped over the threshold, took off my shoes and caught my breath, my father and I calmly settled down in the kitchen and continued our conversation about my sad affairs. So, son, you will have to undergo an examination at the hospital. I want to be sure that everything is alright with you. Oh, something tells me that it is not only that. He is clearly curious about my indicators in terms of chakra volume, control and other things, but he will not admit it. I can see it in his eyes, which are burning with a sky blue fire. You will undergo it tomorrow. I will arrange everything. Okay, father. He lowered his gaze obediently, causing a slightly smug smile. However, it only flashed for a moment, and an ordinary person would have decided that he imagined it, but I have sharp eyes. And what about training? You'll get permission to access the training grounds if everything goes well. And as a bonus, I'll sometimes train you. This is where I should be happy, but somehow it doesn't work out. What can I do? I don't trust him, and until he proves that he's trustworthy, my attitude towards him won't change. Apparently sensing something, Minato continued. Don't be angry, I really don't have much time. The Hokage post gives practically no privileges, while taking a lot of nerves and energy that I could spend on you and Hiroshi. I understand. I really do understand. How can you not understand, when scenes from your past life, with Granny Tsunade burying herself among papers, appear before your eyes at the first call? I hope everything will be okay with the resolution. I hope so too. How about going to the bathhouse today? A cheerful sparkle flashed in his clear eyes, the corners of his lips curved into a semblance of a smile, and overall he did not look like a ruler. Wise with years in front of me sat a young man who had not forgotten the lessons of Ero-san and Jiraiya. But it would be nice to wait for Hiroshi. His team is on a particularly important mission today, catching the escaped cat daimyo once again. The smile that involuntarily appeared from the memories associated with this pet, or rather, a monster in cat form. I healed the scratches on my face for a week, despite the vaunted regeneration of Uzumaki, played a decisive role in the plans, and my father, smiling in response, began to prepare a small snack. Well, yes, my stomach was not just growling, it was screaming from hunger, because I had not eaten anything since morning. I headed to my room, catching the residual puff from the dispersal of the shadow clone on the way. Knowledge, along with the clone's fatigue, began to fill me, but I, a seasoned fist, created a soap bubble in my consciousness, which became the filler for information. The main thing is not to forget to burst it later, otherwise it will accumulate all the data in itself, so that in a few days it will explode and plunge me into the abyss of madness. By this time the reserve had been restored almost completely, so with a clear conscience I created 2 more clones, whom I put to study all the textbooks. Convenient. While I will be basking in hot water, my copies will happily, or without it, go through the entire graduation course. He himself sat down to meditate in order to finally understand what had happened. Kurama. That damn boy! What did he do here that even I was thrown out of my sleep by horror? I barely managed to put him to sleep, otherwise there wouldn't be even a memory left of Naruto, the hero of the Fourth World War. My Jinchuriki would have been a man with his appearance. So, it's time to get out of the hole and finally examine this brainless carcass properly, and not just briefly. The fox stood up, stretched its front paws and, spinning in a whirlwind of chakra, turned into a pretty red-haired girl with fox ears. Experts could see a young Mito Uzumaki, Kushina's predecessor, but, in the absence of experts, no one would suspect anything. Putting her hands together in a concentration seal, the girl looked around with her changed eyes, with a snow-white iris and a black vertical pupil. Yes, this was the clan's eye dojutsu that Kurama had absorbed along with Mito's personality, which she had implanted before her death. Having looked around the walls of the room, the fox, in the guise of a girl, approached one of them and with a wave of his hand created a passage in it, behind which there was a long corridor. A minute of measured steps, and Kurama was already in another room, so similar to his old prison. The same bars, the same seal on them, and the floor strewn with ash-gray sand. But it was not the familiar surroundings that shocked him, but what was sitting and lying behind the bars. This was the Ten-Tails, the sentient embodiment of the combined chakra of all the tailed beasts. And they were about to have a long conversation. The darkness receded, and here I am again in a bright room with an empty bed in the center. Not the slightest hint of my tailed friend. Strange. Looking around, I noticed a passage in the wall on the left, just the right size for a human being, and driven by curiosity, I headed there. I walked about 50 meters along a straight as an arrow corridor with musty, stagnant air, and my eyes were met with a most curious exhibit. A 9-tailed fox was calmly sitting and talking with a white giant. Yes, I was not mistaken then, it was the roar of the Ten-Tails, but the fact that it is now in the same state as Kurama was earlier is somehow unusual. Ash-gray sand replacing the floor, a cage made of thick steel pillars and a sticker of the seal. The same one with which the fox was sealed inside me. Naruto? You're just in time, The fox cub looked back with enthusiasm in his voice and stared at me with changed eyes. Stranger and stranger, I'll explain everything to you later, but for now. Shinju, are you ready to talk to the master? I am ready, roared the mountain of dirty, even in appearance, chakra. Well then, let's get started. Shinji, are you ready to serve Naruto, and even at the cost of your reincarnation to protect him in case of danger? The fox's eyes lit up, but the Ten-Tails didn't even pay attention to it, staring at me with all his huge eyes. And oh, I was actually counting on a different option, but Kurama continued. As expected. Shinji, are you ready to obey all the orders of the Uzumaki heir, in whose veins flows the blood of Senju, Uchiha, and Owaki? I was already stunned by the fox's cry. He clearly knows something. Ready. The gray-white Colossus's response was all the more unexpected. Are you ready to completely entrust your essence to the heir of the Rikudo path? Ready. So be it. The fox cried out tiredly, lowering his fluffed tails, and at that very moment the seal began to burn out, to transform into the hieroglyph. Affirmation. In 10 seconds. Now let's go, I'm not comfortable here. And he jumped on my shoulder without explaining anything. Oh, you impudent white mug, I'm going to give you a hard time now. Returning back, Fox sealed the passage, so it was not immediately obvious that there was anything here other than a monolithic wall. Cool, I guess. So, you clearly have a lot of questions for me. I'll answer them all in order, as soon as you see something. And without wasting any time, he jumped away from me and spun around in a vortex of blinding white chakra. The whirlwind disappears, and I stand there and don't understand anything. Either I'm dreaming all this, or I'm hallucinating because of the stress, or Kurama has suddenly become a pretty girl, somewhat reminiscent of Kushina. Kurama a girl? What's going on? Calm down, it's still me, your friend. Aiki said in a melodic, chest voice. I'll explain everything to you now. Ahem. In general, as you should know, before you, my Jinchuriki was your mother, Kushina. But before her, there was someone too. And that someone was the wife of the first Hokage, Mito Uzumaki. My first friend, who was killed by the Uchiha, the girl said with annoyance, easily read on her face. She was poisoned with some kind of chakra, which left a burn not on the body, but on the soul, and this wound slowly rotted, poisoning all the chakra and aging Mito many times faster than time would have done. I said thoughtfully, completely stunned. Hashirama learned about everything too late, and immediately retired, handing over power in Konoha to his brother, Tobirama, who immediately, without preludes, began to take revenge on the red-eyed bastards. The bitterness in her, or his, voice was immediately readable, and it was impossible not to believe. But the Uchiha were very important to the young Gakurazado, so he did not give the order to destroy them, but only gradually moved them away from the state apparatus, transferring police structures to them and resettling them closer to the outskirts. His revenge was calculated for years, while Hashirama was completely focused on his wife and did not monitor the situation personally, leaving everything to chance. It's sad. Yes, Naruto, it is sad. Remember how Nagato talked about his vision of this world? Suddenly jumped, after all, it was him, from the topic to the topic of the fox. Hatred breeds even more hatred, it is a vicious circle, and this is exactly what happened in the relations between the Senju and Uchiha clans. Pausing, he returned to his original form as a fox with 9 tails, and, lying down on the mat, continued. Mito didn't want to die just like that. She sealed her soul into me, what was left of her, along with her knowledge and Aidojutsu. Seeing my silent question, not a bad pun, huh? He immediately answered. Yes, Mito was the first and last of the Uzumaki who was able to awaken the power of the eyes. Perhaps you, as the heir, will be able to do so too. Exhaling, the fox waved his tails in impatience, and with an effort of will changed his eyes to those I saw when I entered the room with the ten-tailed, a snow-white iris and a black elongated pupil. These are Shohiki, the eyes of the barrier. More precisely, their first form, of which there are only 5. Mito was able to develop them only to the second, but you have every chance to surpass her and begin the revival of Uzumaki. Kurama cancelled the eye technique, and, focusing his gaze on me again, continued. Mito wanted me to take her soul and become a friend to the most worthy of the future Jinchuriki, to teach him everything she knew. And the moment you were able to befriend the tailed beasts, Her soul reminded me of this. At that moment, I began the fusion. Okay, stop. Mito asked you, roughly speaking, to eat her soul? Is she crazy or something? Fact Z logic, or I didn't get it. Yes, she asked? No, she's not crazy. She saw the future of her clan, and she wanted to give it a chance to be reborn. Grimacing as if from a toothache, Kurama looked at me tiredly with eyes full of sadness. Are you ready to follow the path of Rikudo, the path of Mito? I will teach you everything she knew, everything your clan knew. I'll think about it. Rest for now. Kurama, tired of worries, getting ready to return, asked for only one thing. Don't hide anything from me anymore. After all, we are friends. Fine. Instantly finding himself in his room, he glanced at his watch. Only 3 minutes had passed, but it seemed like at least 12 hours, and hearing his father's voice and the cries of his stomach, he hurried down to the kitchen. Having quickly grabbed a sandwich, honestly, I didn't understand what with I was so busy with my thoughts, and having calmed down a bit, I leaned back tiredly in my chair. At my father's questioning look, I nodded my head vaguely, which only increased my interest. My father really pulled himself together and obviously began interrogating his wayward son. What's wrong, Naruto? Does something hurt? His voice sounded concerned, as if he was genuinely worried, but I was so tired that I probably didn't even trust myself. No, everything is fine. Father, do you happen to know who the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails is now? Whatever. If not him, and not his mother, and not Hiroshi, then who? Jinchuriki? Why such questions, and how did you even know about them? He furrowed his brow suspiciously, clearly not quite understanding when his son had grown up so much. Konoha now has only one demon child, Mito Uzumaki, Kushina's mother, your own grandmother. Wait. Mito? The one that Kurama absorbed, the first Hokage's wife? What a claim! Could it be that in this reality she became friends with her Bija? And has she mastered that dojutsu? And what will happen if the two Kuramas meet somehow? Questions, questions, questions. When will the answers finally appear? Oh. Naruto, answer me anyway, did something happen? And such a strange expression on his face that you can't immediately understand, there's so much mixed up in it. It's all fine, just... Will you show me tomorrow where the library is? It was high time to visit this beacon of knowledge. And not be satisfied with just scraps of false history that we were taught at the academy, reworked to fit the ideology of the third. Your son, that is, me, has seriously decided to take up self-education. Smiling at this simple joke, my father ruffled my hair and replied, Of course, Naruto. What kind of father would I be if I didn't help my own son with such a small thing? At that moment, the front door swung open and, there's no other way to describe it, Hiroshi ran into the house, out of breath. Damn, I thought I was late. Hello, Naruto. Hello, father, he greeted sedately, despite the general dishevelment. Where are you going, and without me? Hot water really does heal any wounds, both physical and mental. All problems somehow immediately recede into the background, and sometimes even into the third plan, and you simply enjoy the moment. However, how little a person needs for happiness. Father and Hiroshi had already disappeared into the anteroom to assess the establishment's cooking and try to spy on the ladies washing themselves. Still, it seems to me that Jiraiya isn't such a bad teacher, since even time couldn't break Minato of this bad habit. As for Hiroshi, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. And I had some time to think. So, on the agenda we immediately have a shitload of urgent questions. First, Kurama, who absorbed Mito's soul and offered to teach her everything she knew at the time of her death. Second, the same Mito, only alive, with a local Kurama inside. I wonder what she is like in general, what kind of person she is, whose tune she dances to or calls the tune herself. Third, the history of this world. How is it different from my own, and when did things go down a different path? Mito should have been dead, my parents too. Hiroshi shouldn't have even existed. I'll have to check these things in the library tomorrow, HM. Fourth, if my father does give me permission, for which purpose nothing supernatural should be found in me during the examination at the hospital, will he assign a mentor to observe me, or will he allow a natural talent like me to develop on my own? And finally, the fifth. How did Shinju end up sealed inside me, and what does this mean for me in the long run? I don't even want to hear about perks without triple pay. Either this is the snake asshole's fault, or someone has already been flirting with the Ten-Tails here, and the only people that come to mind are Obito and Madara, and the local version of Orochimaru. I'll probably start from the very beginning. Kurama's training will have to be accepted anyway. It's still Uzumaki's Fuinjutsu, mixed with the personal developments of the strongest of them, plus the barrier dojutsu, Shohiki Dash. Curious eyes, however. And the prospects for their development are also most curious. Next we have the living Mito. There is clearly no need to rush with her. First you need to at least be something to count on from Granny. And why did I even think that I was the last of the Uzumaki? What if Yuzushiogakure is still standing, not having fallen under the onslaught of enemies? I'll sort out the story tomorrow. My father promised to introduce me to the library. Library, this is Naruto. Naruto, this is the library. Yeah. Everything will be clear about training only after the examination, and in the end, I can be a little cheeky and ask my father not to assign anyone to me. And ideally, I'll even get access to one of the indoor training grounds so as not to be seen by the third. Well, and Shinju? I'll have to talk to Kurama first about this Rinneganist asshole, and then with him himself. To discuss, so to speak, our prospects and living together in my mortal body. Now I've solved all the most pressing issues, and my soul immediately feels lighter. And the question is, why the kitty? I'm Yuzu. Namikaze Naruto, Databe. I can't give in and bend to the circumstances, because this is my ninja path. With a smile on my face, I went to save two grown-up fools from a crowd of angry girls, barely covered with towels. They got caught, and I warned you. And even the post of Hokage won't save you from a fair beating. Heh. Oh, what a day! I'm exhausted, honestly, and I can only dream of rest today. I still need to discuss with Kurama regarding his offer, otherwise he might get offended, just like a child. Finally, home, dear home. Both father and Hiroshi were already nodding off, almost stumbling. It is understandable why they immediately went to their rooms to rest. I, in turn, only pretended to be asleep, instantly falling into the inner world, to my tailed friend. You have come, the fox said, more affirmatively than questioningly. What is your answer? Do you agree to become the heir of the Mito path, the Rikudo path, not only by blood, but also by essence? You know, Kurama, if I didn't know you, I'd think you were kidding. It was worth at least slightly diffusing this solemnly oppressive atmosphere. Heh. I agree, but I just wanted to warn you. My father told me today who the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails is, and it's not my mother. And who? He said with interest, leaning forward slightly. Uzumaki Mito, my grandmother. Apparently she either adopted Kushina or I don't know. Well, why not? I'm not the only one freaking out today, am I? What? Mito? So she didn't die here? And yet I correctly calculated his reaction. Growing. Although it was expected, because the world is different. Yeah, I thought about that too and decided to visit the library tomorrow to find out about the differences with ours, I said, catching my friend's interested look. You can't wave your fists forever. That's right. Since you've agreed to the training, your first task is to master the Rasengan, and I was already hoping for uber goodies from the very start. No way. Chakra control is very important, and in order to master dojutsu and use seals, it is desirable that it be almost perfect. That's why you only have 2 weeks. What? 2 weeks? I was really shocked by such a large period of time, because the Rasengan is not that difficult to perform, but rather chakra-consuming. Agreed. Well, that's it. Is that all you wanted to talk about? No. I would like to discuss with you that situation with Shinju, the Ten-Tails. Why drag it out? It's just that I feel sleepy as hell. Can you tell me where you got such knowledge of my family tree? Tomorrow. All tomorrow. Apparently, I really did look bad. You're already falling off your feet. Why don't you go and get some sleep? Well, tomorrow is tomorrow. I didn't argue with him. Then, bye. Good night, Naruto. He muttered, yawning sweetly. Sleep well, for I am always by your side. Having left the inner world, I instantly fell asleep, not worrying about anything. After all, in any of the worlds I will always have at least one friend. Oh, this stupid habit that Jiraiya once instilled in me. He seems to be a married man, 2 wonderful sons, the post of Hokage, but no, he still has the same urge to spy on naked girls. Phew, and all this invariably ends with a counting of the bones of one yellow-haired head of the Gakurezato. It hurts. But right now I'm worried about a slightly different question. When did Naruto manage to grow up so much? It seems like just yesterday he was a snotty little boy who ran to his brother and father for protection from bullies, but now I'm not even sure that he needs protection in general, rather it's the bullies who need it from him. I hope it doesn't lead to trouble. But the biggest change in Naruto's gaze. Even hints of doom, helplessness and impotence have disappeared. In his blue eyes now splashes an ocean of self-confidence and steel will. Sometimes it even seems that it is not your 10-year-old son who is looking at you, but a shinobi wise from years of training, battles and losses, who is enjoying the days of peace. This is very strange. And even though I feel proud of my son, anxiety tells me to keep an eye on him. And I'm used to trusting my feelings, so that's what I'll do. I'll assign one of my trusted people to mentor him. So, who do we have here? My guy. No, Konoha won't survive another beast. Sarutobi Asuma? No again, he's the heir to the Sarutobi clan, and it will be difficult for him to keep an eye on Naruto. I think I found it. Kano Hatake, the last survivor of my first team, as a mentor. Oh, Obito Rin. Oh well. I'll get all the paperwork done tomorrow. Hiroshi. Oh, how good. However, it's been a long time since I've been to a bathhouse, and with my family at that. My father is still the same pervert, and he got me hooked on this ignoble occupation. Although, perhaps, I'm even grateful to him, because these athletically built, tender, steamed figures of the girls. Stop. Enough. Why is this all I can think about when something weird happens to my little brother? He started getting up earlier, running away somewhere, and it feels like he has finally found what they call in books an inner core. Something that prevents him from breaking under the weight of circumstances. What was the starting point of Naruto's growing up? And that black chakra-conducting uniform, which costs a fortune, I don't even remember his completely gray head, and just yesterday he was a redhead, like his father. Of course, my dad and I didn't even pretend that it was supposed to be like that. But it's interesting. Okay, that's it. Next weekend I'll drag him out for a joint training session. We'll test the little one, so to speak, in a combat situation. Decided. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow we're leaving for a mission to Earth. First B-rank mission. Morning, beautiful morning. And why beautiful? Because I'm still alive, because there are a lot of prospects ahead, and also a trip to the library to finally figure out the history of this world. Full of energy, glancing briefly at the clock face, 7:02, however, I went down to the kitchen, where I found my father frying eggs with an unreadable gaze. Good morning, father. Good. Son. Remember yesterday I promised to write you a permit for access to the training grounds? He got straight to the point, stirring the dish in the frying pan with a spatula. So, today you are excused from classes at the academy, and first we are going to the hospital. I made arrangements with an Iranian I know. He will quickly conduct an examination and immediately give you the results. That's good. Indeed it is good. Less hassle with doctors, as they say, is better than more. So, right after breakfast? Yes. Hiroshi has already left for his team. They have a mission outside the Land of Fire today, for 3 days of field work. If everything goes according to plan, he will be home by the end of the week. Apparently reading the question in my eyes, he added. And I also found a mentor for you, my former student. I will introduce you later. Wait. Rin? So she didn't die from a Chidori to the heart by Kakashi-sensei either? Damn, I like this world more and more. Meanwhile, my father had finally prepared the meal and served the eggs on plates. The smell was simply amazing, although that might be because I was so damn hungry. After we started eating, we both fell silent for a while, but in the middle of the meal, footsteps were heard on the stairs, and Bloody Habanero herself appeared before my eyes, sleepy and with dark circles under her eyes. She must have returned from a mission during the night. Good morning, Kushina. Sit down, breakfast is already on the table. Her father addressed her in a friendly manner, and with a small sparkle in his eyes. You have a week off now, right? Good morning, Mom. I did not stay aside, although I did not expect a mutual reaction. And I was not mistaken. Hello, Minato. Yes, finally the weekend, I'll at least get some sleep. She answered her father, simply ignoring me, like I was empty space. It's a shame, Databeo. The conversation somehow died down by itself, and having quickly finished breakfast and put the plate in the sink, I went upstairs and quickly changed. I will not be sad because this woman, who apparently became my mother by mistake, completely ignores me. Fuck her. I myself am already curious about what they will find in the hospital. And my father did not keep me waiting. After 2 minutes he politely knocked on the closed door. Instantly, in my father's shunshin, we moved to the entrance of the hospital, and without a second's hesitation, I followed my father to the doors of the Irian Ninjutsu abode. The hospital greeted us with gray, crystal-clear tiles, in which one could easily see one's reflection. I wonder if the Irianins have special jutsu to maintain their own sanitary standards? Otherwise, I will not be able to explain the miracle I saw. Yes, in my past life I was in this building quite often, but as far as I remember, I never left the hospital through the central hall. The window was my eternal exit. Remembering that time, I can't even believe that I was so reckless, yeah. But now I will be much more responsible than before, because even if I look like a child, my whole being screams that I have seen some shit in this life. I'm thinking about something else. Together with my father, we approached the registration desk. What else could a nook in front of a door with shelves with a file cabinet visible behind it be? And greeted the medic on duty, who turned out to be a pretty girl, a little older than my mother. I'd like to see who would call a shinobi medic, a woman, somewhat vaguely reminiscent of Sakura. The fact that she had the same last name as our eternal crybaby companion was evidenced by her badge. Well, not really a badge. There was a token with her last name and, apparently, her rank hanging around her neck, which also had the number 3 on it. Glancing at me briefly, she immediately turned to my father, slightly bowing her head in greeting. Hokage-sama. Do you have an appointment? Hello, Mabuki-san. Yes, Gecko-san made an appointment with me today. My father responded to my bow, which surprised me greatly, and smiled and continued. I would like one of the best medic nin in our hospital to examine Naruto. Oh, so this is Naruto. Bypassing all social barriers, she leaned slightly over the counter, which, in turn, was a bit high, and I, after all, am a child, and stared in surprise at my snowy hair. It's true, Naruto, and I didn't recognize you right away. What happened to your hair? Are you really dyeing it? No, what are you saying, Mabuki-san? It just, well, what would a hypothetical child, who is already aware of the gayness, and that most respectable shinobi, if not despise then ignore its representatives, have to answer to that? Let's continue playing our role. That's why we want to talk to Gecko. My father, in turn, saved me from the persistent lady. After all, she really is Sakura's mother, and it is because of her that she has such a disgusting character. Something happened. Recently. Okay, come in. I hope Naruto-kun will be okay, smiling slyly, so much so that I suspected her of being related to Kurama. She patted my slightly grown-out hair and pointed in the direction. You'll go right. Gecko-san will be here in a few minutes. Please wait for him in the reception area. Goodbye, Mabuki-san. Like a well-behaved child, the son of the fourth, a hero of the Fourth World War, I bowed and followed the one who ran ahead. Damn, he was the Hokage, but he could have shown at least a bit of politeness. At times like these, I even feel ashamed of him. As soon as you step through the door separating the hall from the rest of the hospital, the shiny tiled floor gave way to the familiar stone floor and green-painted walls. The hallways were ventilated, but it would probably never be possible to completely remove the smell of medicine from this building. Even now it smelled of lavender, with soft notes of chamomile. After about 30 meters of hurried walking, I'm a child, we finally reached the office of the local head doctor and sat down together on a bench specially installed for this purpose, waiting. My disappointment in my father's manner still hadn't passed, which is probably why he was able to catch something in my gaze and shrugged his shoulders guiltily. The conversation was not going well at all. Perhaps it was the place itself, my childishly sincere resentment for my father's lack of culture, or something else, I don't know. But the wait was not long, and a minute later powerful steps, full of confidence in themselves and their powers, were heard from the same place we had come from. Minato-kun, hello? And this is Naruto, then? And the voice matched his steps, just as frighteningly powerful. Turning in his direction, I stared in shock at. Ahem, from a sitting position I could only stare at the man's most precious thing, so I moved my gaze a little higher and made sure. The best doctor in the Konoha hospital turned out to be a huge fellow, almost 2 meters tall, and with arms like his father's legs. And his dignity is quite proportional to his body, judging by his bulging pants. So, something weird happened to Naruto yesterday, the guy started to say. No, well, I really can't take this killing machine seriously. And because of this incident, Naruto, out of nowhere, went gray in an instant. And he doesn't remember anything. Am I right? Yes, that's right. Gecko-senpai, maybe at least you can shed some light on this story. The father became seriously worried under the medic's attentive gaze. I found him near the river, behind the wall of Konoha. Naruto says that he trained there, alone, and I believe my son, because no one else's chakra was felt. This is all strange. Oh well, scratching the stubble on his chin with his huge paw, Gecko turned his gaze to me. What do you say, Naruto-kun? Do you mind if I examine you? I would be grateful if you would take care of me, Gecko-san. Despite the doctor's animal nature, a wave of calm emanated from him, a confidence that everything would be fine. Okay. Minato, wait outside the door, please. Having kicked out my father, Gecko pointed to a couch standing by the wall, as if inviting me to lie down and trust. Take off everything on top, you can leave your pants, and you yourself lie down and close your eyes. Following his instructions, I quickly pulled off my sleeveless jacket, then my t-shirt, and lay down, easily fitting on the bed designed for adult shinobi. I closed my eyes, and an unknown force almost forcibly pressed me to the couch. So, the main thing is not to worry. I am in the office of Konoha's chief medic, and he looks adequate. Don't move, I'm going to start the tests now, Gecko whispered soothingly in a slightly changed voice. It was thanks to this warning that I did not flinch when something like a hand seemed to materialize inside my stomach, alternately feeling the organs and checking the integrity of the channels and nodes of the chakra. This very strange procedure lasted for about 5 minutes, by the end of which the doctor exhaled barely audibly. But I heard it. Apparently, this mysterious technique eats up a lot of chakra. So, overall you're healthy, your organs are working fine, there's no damage to your chakra channels at all, but something's bothering me. Do you mind if I run the final test? It's not that I'm against it, but the only people who could bother him are Kurama and Shinji. Damn, you can't get out of it, he'll tell his father anyway. Yes, of course, Gecko-san. Well, that's good. It might be a bit unpleasant now, be patient, you're almost an adult now, fuck, that's all I need. Is he going to dissect me or something? Without wasting any time, Gecko stood at the head of the bed and folded his hands into a concentration seal. About 30 seconds of tension, it was reeking of considerable power. Only now did I fully realize that not only Tsunade-sama and, in the future, Sakura, being medics, could be so strong, and an unexpectedly clean release of chakra in the direction of my little head. It's burning, Databeo. Shinji roared in pain inside, but I was able to hold back the chakra that was rushing out, not without Kurama's help, of course, but still. Finally, the alien chakra stopped feeling in my body, and I opened my eyes. To see. Damn, how can I explain this to my dad? Gecko-san was lying unconscious on the floor, drooling from his slightly open mouth. That's what a shinobi is even when falling. This colossus didn't make a sound, and I only found out about the fall when I turned around. The medic's chakras were at their lowest. Apparently he overexerted himself like the greenest youth, scanning me for his own zoo. Such things happen, ahem. Whatever happens, it's worth calling my father. After all, he's the adult of the two of us, although I'd argue, so let him solve the problem that has arisen. Getting up from the couch, he headed for the door, only to fly back a second later from a gust of wind. Yes, that's exactly how hard the door to the office swung open, without breaking even once. Are they magical, or something? Luckily, he didn't have time to fall, instantly caught by the hand by his father. Oh, this flying thunder technique, damn. Having finally regained his balance, he looked questioningly at his embarrassed father, to which he nevertheless explained what the hell he had just done. Well, I felt a serious surge of Gecko-san's chakra and I thought. I didn't think anything, forget it, something related to his past? I wonder, what happened here? Gecko-san spent too much chakra on my examination, there it is, lying there. So this is one of Konoha's best medics? Yes, I was waiting for this moment. You see, Gecko is a genius, and like all gifted people, he has an enthusiastic nature. So, apparently, he got carried away a brilliant explanation, Databale. In principle, it was intended for a child, so there's no reason to complain. Minato lifted, how? How did he lift this mountain of muscles, mistakenly called a doctor? Gecko-san and transferred him to the couch, the same one on which I, in my humble person, had been lying just a minute ago. Naruto, run to Mabuki, let him call one of the other doctors, was my father's order. Without hesitation, I jumped up and in a couple of seconds I handed it over to Mabuki-san, who in turn called out to one of the pretty nurses hurrying to her workplace, and together we returned to the office of the genius stupid medic. Having treated Gecko to chakra-restoring pills and given him a sniff of ammonia, the nurse proudly left, shooting her eyes in his father's direction as a last resort. And this dog even blushed slightly. Gods, is he also a womanizer or something? Meanwhile, Gecko had already reached, so to speak, the necessary condition and could express himself normally. At my father's request, I was still shown the door so that I wouldn't eavesdrop. Well, whatever, the main thing is that everything is fine with me. Minato and Gecko. So, what do you say? Minato was probably not in the mood, even though he had skillfully hidden it from his son. To have made such a fool of himself, using his signature technique and burning a third of his reserves for the sake of acceleration. Gods, when did he become so stupid? Well, I can tell you a couple of things that you may or may not like. Gecko seemed to have come to his senses, but there were still circles floating before his eyes. I got carried away again, and I swore off it. Your son is relatively healthy, his body is normal, his chakra is circulating, albeit strangely, but still normally. That's good. What's strange about its circulation? Well, it seems that not everything is as simple as it seemed at first glance. The chakra in Naruto's body, when he unconsciously or quite consciously realizes what he is doing, sometimes speeds up, sometimes slows down, like all shinobi. But in the stomach area, it twists into a spiral and diverges slightly changed. Thoughtfully scratching his short beard, Gecko took a breath in and out, and finally coming to his senses, continued. Mito Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, has a similar movement of chakra. She's like your mother-in-law, right? Yes, mother-in-law. I understand. But I can easily allow him to train, right? Of course. He already has a lot of chakra, and it will increase with each passing day. Believe me, having settled down more comfortably, Gecko closed his eyelids and, already falling asleep, said goodbye to Minato. I'll sleep for now, and you? Close the door, please. Agrrr. Damn Gecko. He always screws everything up. Having completed all the necessary tests and finally leaving the hospital building, my father and I headed towards the academy. Damn, I forgot that the Hokage's office and the entire administrative apparatus are also located there. It's time to turn on my brain, otherwise it's easy to kick the bucket. Naruto, take a walk somewhere for an hour. I'll fill out the paperwork for your clearance. My father looked at me very strangely and, if I weren't Naruto, there was concern in his eyes. I'll introduce you to the mentor at the same time. And now take this, I'll find you by it, don't lose me. Having handed me a kunai, oh my god, it's the same one. Minato and Shunshin moved, apparently, straight to the threshold of the administration. It's not visible from here anyway, so there's no point in guessing. Well, I have a whole hour. I think I should visit Kurama and Shinju and finally clear up all the misunderstandings between us. The morning sun, although slightly autumnal, was already warming up, and without thinking twice, I went to the ever-memorable park next to the academy. Thinking about why my father doesn't hate me like my mother, I didn't even notice how I got there. And again, As if I had gotten into a time loop, from somewhere behind the trees I could hear the screams of children having fun with their next victim. No, well, now I'll definitely beat them up. Pushing aside the low-hanging branches of some tree, I saw a beautiful picture. The last of the Uchiha stood surrounded by 24 untalented kids and defended himself from their inept blows. I don't know why he didn't use fire techniques, and he could. I remember, after graduating from the academy, he surprised both me and Sakura with his fireballs and bullets. Apparently he didn't want to cripple the stupid kids who for some reason got to the heir of the great clan and the genius of our graduating class, PFF, yeah. Nevertheless, a couple of abrasions on his arms and legs and rumpled clothes were alarming. I wouldn't want to catch him again, who had decided for no apparent reason to fly out of the hospital windows. So I didn't really have a choice. I took off and went to defend the honor of the homegrown Avenger. Hey punks, what are you doing here? Half the idiots turned around in surprise and stared at me, amused by the situation, with confusion. 20 against 1? That's not even funny. Who are you anyway? Naruto? The smartest of them gets a kick in the spine from Sasuke, who doesn't count the clouds. This is where the stupid little brothers' success ends, however, and 3 young brats immediately give the red-eyed boy a beating from behind. A few moments, and somehow it turned out that we were standing back to back, surrounded by this gang. 3 of them were out cold, but the rest of them were still there. Ahem, I think it's time. I fold my hands into the seal of shadow clones and give chakra, impatiently rushing through the tenketsu, and immediately putting in a third of the reserve. I look at the work of my hands in amazement. The clearing suddenly became very crowded. The clones took up almost all the free space. Initially, I wanted to summon 15 copies of myself to even the odds and not rub Sasuke's nose in his incompetence, but for some reason about 100 were summoned, each of which had my battle experience and good hand-to-hand combat skills. And this entire army blocked any movement, not only of the hooligans, but also of Sasuke and me, gently pushing us behind our backs. Ahem, but it's not that hard to explain where I got so much chakra from. I absorbed Kurama, and I still haven't learned to separate white chakra from blue, so a rather ordinary technique worked with such an effect. And Shinji clearly added something to the reserve. In general, the beating of the youngsters who thought they were God knows who, which never started, came to naught, because no one could adequately perceive such dismorality, and 4 more were added to the 3 unconscious bodies. The rest reacted like the most ordinary children. Some cried, some screamed at the top of their lungs, and only one of the crowd looked angrily straight into my eyes, ignoring the clones. Apparently, I made an enemy for myself. I canceled the technique, and with a loud poof, the clones disappear, leaving only memories of themselves and returning almost all the chakra that I supplied them with. The technique splits the shinobi's reserve into all the clones in the proportion that it needs. So the chakra disappears without a trace only if the clone is killed. When the technique is cancelled, the chakra returns, and the costs are only what was spent on using the technique and maintaining it, i.e. mere tears. The kids picked up their comrades who had fallen in an unequal battle. Yeah, 20 against 2 is not fair. For 20, of course, if 2 are future shinobi, and quickly ran off in an unknown direction to heal their emotional wounds. Why did you interfere? They insulted my family! Sasuke growled, as if he had forgotten about such a word as thank you. Ahem, why, you ask? Stupid younger brother. Probably so that you don't disgrace the honor of your great family, which raised such a weakling. Without answering, he glared at me angrily and headed off somewhere towards the academy. Well, fuck him, I didn't try so hard for him as for my principals. So what if they beat him up? They didn't kill him. I repeat, screw it, I'll just wait for my father. I think he'll find a suitable mentor. I just hope it won't be Kakashi-sensei. That lazy, disillusioned asshole really pissed me off with her indifference even in her previous existence. Having sat down in the middle of the meadow trampled by children, right in the grass covered with dust, I somehow immediately detached myself from the surroundings and, out of old habit, having checked whether there was anyone nearby, calmly exhaled and went to my inner world. There was still time, so there was no need to worry too much. I would not be late in returning. The darkness pleasantly engulfed my entire being, and after a few seconds, I was no longer sitting on the withered grass, but on a stone floor, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow. Opening my eyes, I looked around as usual, and, not noticing Kurama anywhere, but finding an opening in the wall, I headed off in search of adventure. Or rather, following the trail of the intruder. Damn, after Kurama, in short. This time the corridor did not smell musty and muddy. A fresh breeze was driving the sand underfoot, swirling small eddies and playing with them like a small child. All the cracks and unevenness had disappeared from the walls, and now the blue-violet monolith seemed to say that now everything would be fine. After some time, I nevertheless left the corridor into the room with the cage, and, no longer surprised by the changes that had taken place, I was stunned by the exhibition. Kurama, in his fox form, was playing shogi, Shikamaru's favorite game, with some unknown one-eyed animal. Only by the number of tails could it be determined that this was Shinju. Oh, by the way, they played through the bars, like a prisoner and a warden, who even on opposite sides of the barricades remained true to their friendship. Funny, don't you think? Coughing softly to attract attention, I came closer and looked at the board. I am certainly no expert in this game. I have never won against the heir of Nar, but I know the rules. I was even more surprised when I discovered that the tree god was winning the game. Somehow I didn't think that machine could be smarter than most people. Although, if you remember that Shinju is a fusion of the chakra tree and a fucking goddess with the last name Matsutsuki, nothing surprising. This hybrid had time to practice, being deprived of a body and banished to the underside of the world. Naruto! The fox cub exclaimed joyfully, or is it just me? He made a face and impatiently waved his paw at the 10 tails, and continued. We've been waiting for you for a long time. How are things with the Rasengan? Master! His opponent in the game hissed with a barely noticeable bow. Hello, my tailed friends. I would like to finally clarify the situation that has arisen between us all and, if possible, summarize the knowledge I have gained. I was stunned by such a twisted phrase, and having also earned a respectful look from the tailed tribe, I sat down on the sand, leaning against one of the pillars of the lattice. Well, it would be nice to outline the further path of development. Whoa, Naruto, is that really you? Without changing his pose, Kurama activated such interesting eyes and looked at me for a long time. And it's really you. You're growing up, apparently it's high time. Probably. Let me try to summarize what I've learned in the last few days, and you'll correct me. As for me, it's not a bad idea, and it will be faster that way. Let's do it. The fox cub wrinkled his nose and waved his tails, creating a small tornado behind him, as if he was impatient. I agree, and I finally understood who little Shinju reminds me of. Yamato-sensei's little wood dragon, but at the same time, the tail is not wooden at all, so it will just be a dragon. So, I'll start from the very beginning. Orochimaru transferred my soul from my 30-year-old self to my 11-year-old self, in a completely different world. Somehow Kurama also transferred with me, becoming a part of my soul and pumping all of his chakra into me, changing its color and polarity, and changing his appearance. But Orochimaru's experiment was a failure, so the excess chakra he used was sealed back into my soul, taking the form of the 10-tailed Shinju and, in fact, making me the new Rikudo. Is that correct so far? Having caught my breath from such a list of discoveries from the past days, I looked at the tailed brethren. Yes, that's right. The only thing I can add, Kurama is in his element, always making assumptions. Shinju decided to remain silent, as if he was busy thinking out a strategy in shogi. Most likely the transfer freed me from the seal's influence in order to seal Comrade Shinju into you. This was said with some strange accent, and a voice clearly rang out in his head. Shoot! In order not to get lost in the multitude of other worlds, I allowed you to absorb me. That's why everything turned out this way. I see. Well, I'll continue. I don't know why, but my parents survived, while the entire Uchiha clan, I think, was destroyed by Itachi. And my older brother, Hiroshi, who appeared out of nowhere, I scratched my chin in bewilderment. And my mother didn't become a Jinchuriki, she remained Uzumaki Mido, the first wife, who turned out to be my granny in this world. And these are only the biggest oddities. There are countless little things, they're just not so noticeable yet. That's right, Naruto. When are you going to visit the library? It's time to clarify the differences. That fox face, however, gave out a sensible idea. and I myself wanted to visit the beacon of knowledge. Don't forget to drop by when you figure everything out. We'll talk about your ancestors. And now get out of here, time is almost up. And really, I've been sitting around too long. It's time to call it a day. I wouldn't want my father to find me frozen like a stone statue in a sage pose. Agreed. Kurama, Shinju, good luck. Kurama just nodded, and the dragon muttered something like, goodbye, and picking up one of the pieces with his claw, moved it one square forward. Closing my eyes for a moment, as if by magic, I found myself in the middle of a wasteland again, and only a slight breeze stirred my snow-white hair and coal-black uniform. A minute of contemplation of this pastoral scene passed, and from behind a characteristic sound of shunshin was heard. Someone who smelled like Dad and was also Dad patted him on the shoulder. Well, son, shall we go? Went. Having moved in the same shunshin to a gray, inconspicuous building that was located far from the busy streets of Konoha, we headed towards the entrance. A couple of meters before the mysterious establishment, Minato stopped, and turning his whole body towards me, took me by the shoulder and leaned over no less mysteriously. Well, here we are, Naruto. I know that I promised to sort out the training issue, and I pretty much sorted it out, but yesterday you asked me about something else. Looking deeply into my shameless eyes and slightly squinting, he waved his hand in the direction of the building mentioned earlier. This is the library, or rather, its archive section. High-ranking shinobi often hang out here, studying everything they might need to complete a mission. So the chance of running into one of the living legends here is indecently high. I probably should have opened my eyes wide in amazement, imitated my father's rapid breathing and admiration, but I didn't. Why, if I'm a legend to myself? Not having waited for any reaction to his words, my father grinned and continued. In general, as expected, the son of the Hokage is not impressed by such things. I wrote you a pass here for 3 days. If you find something interesting for yourself, don't worry. I warned the mentors and mother, but this is a great gift. As for me, 3 whole days, yes, in them I will learn the whole history of this world. Apparently, having read something on my face, Minato told me the most important part of his monologue with a smile. And I also have a task for you. One of the people studying the materials in the archive is your future mentor. Find him and tell me. I think if you manage, we can agree on something else. You know, for the first time in these 3 days I felt. No, I believe that someone really cares about me. Let me tell you, it's damn nice. Even if my father is under the third, I won't abandon this yellow-haired bastard just because he gives a shit about me. Maybe someday we'll have a serious conversation, but I'll find something to convince him of. The word of the air. As if to confirm my thoughts, something suddenly thundered in the cloudless sky, as if to say that the higher powers would not forget the promise of a naughty boy. But I do not intend to forget about such a thing. Bite me. Okay, Dad. I'll figure him out, whoever he is. The pause dragged on a bit, and even though everything inside me froze with excitement, I managed to squeeze these words out of myself. Oh, you called me Daddy? For the first time in 3 days. Always Father. Father. Boring. Just praise the asshole for his concern, and he immediately turns into an unbearable idiot. You're the bore, you old fart. Who's the old one here, me? Dad pretended to be angry, but I can see those eyes sparkling with joy. Yes, indeed, Dad. Well, let's go, no need to stand here. Got the assignment? Get to work. Yes, sir, Comrade Hokage. And without holding back, both of them burst into laughter and headed for the entrance. Ahead of me are 3 whole days of playing historian and physiognomist, so I can't lose a drop of fighting spirit. Inside, the library archive turned out to be ordinary. The usual reception desk, a dozen 5-seater reading tables and a door in the distance leading to, in fact, shelves with books and scrolls full of the information that interested me. Behind the counter sat, there's no other way to describe it, a gray-haired old man, full of dignity and not bending his back in front of anyone. His past was indicated by the protector with the familiar list symbol tied above his left elbow, over the unremarkable clothes of an average city dweller. He didn't bow to the Hokage either, he just nodded solemnly, showing his respect for his strength rather than for his power. If only there had been more iron shinobi like him in my past life, maybe the war would have gone a completely different way, and my friends wouldn't have had to die. Hello, Kaija-senpai. My father, in turn, responded with a full bow, and I had no choice but to mirror him. Here, I brought my child to be introduced to the mysteries of science and history. I'll bring the past a little later, okay? Hello, Minato-kun. You don't respect the old man at all. You started visiting him once every 6 months since you took up your post. The old man, unfortunately, did not feel like an old man at all, and if you compare him with the third's face, so familiar to all of Konoha, I would rather bet on this Kaijo. And this, then, is Naruto Namikaze, the rotten seed of our great Hokage? No, I didn't want to get angry at this, but the blood in my veins started boiling. A huge amount of chakra flowed through the tenketsu, and it happened I lost my temper. It was a huge stupidity on his part to say such a thing in front of his father and strangers. Bastard, how dare he? This worthless, helpless bastard, who does nothing but sit around in the archives while other shinobi die for the village? Everything went dark before his eyes, yaks splashed in all directions, pressing the few who had gathered to receive the necessary knowledge to the ground and twisting the old man under the attentive gaze of his father, who stood in place and continued to stand. Having released a little of the internal tension, which made everyone present exhale sharply, and the old man coughed, he was honored with a fleeting approving glance from his father, who had again become like metal, and his metal-like voice, addressing the archivist. You say, rotten seed, Kaija-senpai? I don't advise repeating that mistake again. Turning around, he went out into the street and shined into unknown distances. I had no choice but to go to the farthest table and, taking the scroll reference in my hands, begin to read the titles of the documents and books. A few minutes later, when I had just reached the middle of a not-so-large list of historical documentation, by the way, almost silently, from behind, came a grown-up fool who dared to insult the son of the Hokage in the presence of, in fact, the Hokage and strangers, for which he paid. I humbly asked for forgiveness for my lack of restraint, respected heir. It seemed to me, or did he put some other meaning into these words, pronouncing the last word like Kurama, with a barely noticeable breathiness and such a familiar hiss? However, as soon as I turned around, there was no one around. The archivist seemed to have vanished into thin air. To hell with him, to hell with all of them. I must first and foremost protect my loved ones, and only then seek respect from every dog barking with or without reason. Dad gave me a task, and I will complete it, regardless of any archivists or those who pretend to be them. On the first day I only sorted out 3 scrolls, written long before Konoha appeared and somehow preserved intact to this day. Apparently they were kept in some temple and then transferred to Konoha. The first scroll told of a time when shinobi had not yet been discovered. At that time, a huge tree grew right in the center of the world, reaching up to the sky, and even approaching it was dangerous. The lower branches would entangle the careless traveler and suck out all the life from him, to the last drop. According to legend, the god tree, as people called it, grew from the amount of blood-stained earth. Well, wars were common then, bloody and merciless. There were no states yet, no daimyo, no restraining factor in the form of shinobi, and ordinary people slaughtered entire villages of the same people in the struggle for land, power, and wealth. It was a dark time, however. The second scroll was written by some monk, during the formation of the shinobi order, about the origin of chakra and its users. It was not so much a story as the reasoning of a learned man, who, as it turned out, was a student of one of Rikudo's own students. From his flowery expressions, which were so replete with the text, I managed to extract a grain of truth. In his opinion, and mine, by the way, too, because I myself communicated with Rikudo, someone came to ours from another world who was able to climb to the top of the god tree and eat the fruit of chakra, absorbing all its power. It is unknown what happened after that, but 20 years later, near one of the small garrison towns, a pregnant woman with snow-white skin appeared, introducing herself as Kaguya Otsutsuki. She was taken in by a blacksmith who supplied not only weapons but also tools to the entire town. A widower, he fell in love with the unearthly beauty of a woman at first sight, and even the addition of a child did not scare him off. Kaguya reacted favorably to the blacksmith's inept courtship and agreed to live with him. A wonderful 6 months of life together passed. The blacksmith was happy to find love for the second time, and could not be happier with his beloved. Kaguya became one of their own, for the entire settlement, and no one even thought about offending her with word or deed. The other day, the young Matsutsuki gave birth to two beautiful twin babies, named Hagoromo and Hamura. Quite a few people gathered for the celebration held in honor of this event, and everyone rejoiced, looking at the happy blacksmith and Kaguya, comforting the babies in the manger. But the happiness could not last forever. Unexpectedly, war came to the house, and everyone who could hold a weapon in their hands was called up as a militia in the army of the local prince. The blacksmith was also taken, and although he promised to return, he did not keep his promise. It is worth noting here that the difference in the original history of the worlds is striking. In ours, Kaguya wanted peace from the very beginning and tried her best to achieve it, which is why she ate the fruit of chakra. And Kaguya's children were from the ruler of those lands, and not from the blacksmith. Well, I'll continue. The blacksmith died as a hero, holding off a dozen enemies single-handedly, smashing everything around him with his hammer, and crushing the skulls of those who encroached on his peaceful life. He was revered as a hero, but Kaguya was inconsolable. In the end, she went mad and wished for peace in the world, ascending to the heavens in an instant. A few days later, when the townspeople watching over her children realized that something strange was happening, a sprout emerged from the ground, growing thicker every second. It grew rapidly until it became as big as the god tree, which had disappeared a measly 20 years ago. And the people of the world realized that nothing was over. Kaguya didn't become a murderer, no. She wished for world peace by immersing everything around her in an illusion, and the only ones who weren't affected by the first use of eternal Tsukuyumi were her children. 2 years passed. The madness of the newly created goddess receded, and the technique was removed, but only from a third of the population. The emaciated people, who had fallen from an illusory fairy tale into harsh reality, cursed Otsutsuki, but, over time, forgot about the horror of the first years. The twin brothers by that time grew up, matured and, forgotten by their own mother, went in search of adventure. Decades of a relatively calm life, devoid of wars, there was no one to fight, were interrupted by another attack of madness of the goddess, who from this turning point was called nothing but a demon. The fool imagined herself to be God knows who, and her only desire was to master all the chakra in the world. Having destroyed all the carriers of the desired energy, including Hagoromo's son, and having absorbed their life force, she set her sights on her own children. Hamura, as the eldest, even if only for a minute, made the decision for both of them to destroy his own mother, who had gone mad. Kaguya allied herself with Shinju, the tree god, and became the Ten-Tails, turning against the brothers in her quest for soul power, but her plan failed. The result was the sealing of the Ten-Tails' power into the youngest of the brothers and the creation of the moon from the tailed beast's body. Well, at least history repeats itself in that. Hamura and his remaining children went to the moon to ensure that the Shinju was not reborn, which became the job of the subsequent generations of his line, while Hagoromo began spreading chakra among ordinary people, raising the first generation of shinobi. Unfortunately, the scroll ended here, but the third information carrier turned out to be much more interesting to me in the near future. Scroll of the History of the Descendants of Hagoromo, Scroll of Indra and Azura. A scroll of Indra and Azura, sons of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, better known as Rikudo Sennin. Well, it told a lot, and the author was someone who easily surpassed Jiraiya in storytelling style. So, after sealing Shinju into the youngest of the brothers, Hagoromo also became a father. Indra was born first, followed a year later by Azura. Despite the fact that their mother died during Azura's birth, their childhood could not be called unhappy. The brothers grew up in love and care, learning the art of ninshu, until one day their father decided to choose a successor to his path. The brothers, under his instructions, set out to 2 distressed villages to restore peace and prosperity to them. Azura was accompanied on his journey by Taizo, one of his village friends whom he had helped when he was imprisoned by Indra for breaking the law, albeit for the sake of his ailing mother. Finally, their journey through the harsh desert brought them to a small, yet somehow prosperous village, where Azura sensed the presence of the divine tree. They were met with hostility by the locals, but Azura quickly earned their trust by curing a girl named Kana. When Azura went to investigate the village, he found that the main slope had been sealed and was being guarded. Kana then asked him to cure her mother, who along with many other villagers had fallen ill with an unknown illness. Upon examining her, Azura noticed small roots growing on her and a powerful chakra presence. Certain that the divine tree was somehow involved, he and Taizo knocked out the guards and found a small cave that led to the inner space of the tree. Realizing that it was the presence of the divine tree's sapling that made the land fertile while also causing people to become ill from eating the food grown there, Azura approached the village elder. Having already figured out the truth about the divine tree, the elder regretfully rejected Azura's offer to destroy the sapling, as the population had lost too many people due to the previous barrenness of the land before the sapling appeared. Azura noted that the only way to help them was to find another source of water they could rely on, so he worked hard for weeks digging a well. Eventually, the villagers were inspired by his selfless actions and decided to help him. At the same time, Azura began teaching them ninjutsu, which they tried to use to make their work easier and faster. A year passed, and they finally came across water, eventually forming a large lake near the village. Delighted by their efforts, the villagers proudly burned the shoot of the tree, and sick people began to recover thanks to the fresh water and Azura's methods. The younger brother's work was complete, and Azura returned to his home village, along with many people, including Kana, who wanted to see where the Otsutsuki had learned ninjutsu. After returning home, Azura met with his father and older brother, who had already completed his mission a month ago. The scroll ended there, and only after turning it this way and that did he notice a sentence scratched by hand in the margins. Indra is Uchiha, Azura is Uzumaki, and Senju, Nawaki is? Nawaki? But there was no mention of Nawaki in the scroll. I remember Kurama also mentioned this Nawaki, but who he is, or what he is, I never found out. Damn. Having finished reading the last scroll for today, I decided to go out and get some fresh air. Fortunately, it wasn't getting dark too early. But I shouldn't forget about my father's assignment, so I looked around unnoticed and noticed 3 shinobi and 1 civilian in the room. Plus, there was movement behind the shelves. None of those I saw looked like high-class specialists, they didn't even smell of chakra, and therefore it can be said with certainty that there is no mentor among them. Another matter is the one, who is looking for something among the shelves in the next room. Well, let's wait. After 5 long minutes, this person came out into the common room. After all, she was a girl, and quite a young one at that, and sat down at the end table, closest to the exit. She reminds me of someone. Long snow-white hair, just like me, hehe, the standard Jonin uniform, a black tight-fitting mask on the lower part of the face and a Konoha forehead protector tied so as to cover one eye. Wait, what? Kakashi-sensei? Calm down, calm down, calm down. Well, I certainly didn't expect this from this world. Okay, my parents and grandma are alive. Okay, I got a little brother. Okay, I'm also the mysterious heir. But why the hell is Kakashi-sensei a girl? Gods, give me the strength to endure all this, I beg you. After the 3 days I was given, I learned almost everything I needed to know. The battle between Hashirama and Madara had taken place here at about the same time as in my previous incarnation. The same could be said about the attempted coup d'etat led by the head of the Uchiha clan, Itachi, and Sasuke's father. And even though some documents were marked top secret, the magic phrase, "My dad is the Hokage," allowed me to act like a complete asshole. My father was respected and slightly feared in the village. Also, by the end of the last day, I had 2 candidates for the role of sensei, either the local version of Hatake Kakashi, or, in fact, my father himself. The others were eliminated for various reasons. Someone was too weak for such a mission, someone was too busy with some internal affairs of their clans, and someone simply occupied too responsible a post for this matter. And yes, don't think that all I did for 3 days was watch and study historical scrolls, no. And I slept enough, fortunately. There was always a bed in the utility room for such cases. Thanks to the assistant archivist for the tip, and 8 on time, I still had pocket money left, because I still hadn't bought hair dye. And I don't need it anymore, I really like my new hair color. So, as I understood from one scroll with legends, which was gathering dust for lack of use under one of the distant shelves, Nawaki was the 3rd son of Rakuto, completely blind from birth, but with his own gift to see not the present, as ordinary people do with their eyes, but the future. Even if vaguely, even if his predictions did not always come true, but the world of shinobi knows about 12 events that happened, predicted by the blind boy. There are rumors that there was a 13th, but there is no reliable information about it. And it's a pity. The Nawaki clan was destroyed a couple of years before the fall of Yuzushiogakure. The reason was quite banal. One of the current members of the clan predicted the death of the beloved first wife of the daimyo of that time. A painful death. Well, it is easy to guess what happened next. A clan of blind people, consisting of a couple of families, will never compare in combat power with qualified jonin. A sad story, and if you believe Kurama, then the blood of Nawaki, Senju and Uchiha flows in me. I won't even mention Uzumaki. I was, am and always will be, which means that I really am the heir. Lost in thought, I almost fell asleep, but at that very moment a large warm hand fell on my shoulder. Startled by surprise, I instantly turned around and saw my father smiling. Someday he will get it for such jokes, believe me. So, have you found out everything you wanted? Not a greeting, not even a hint of him. Still, we need to teach him politeness. Hello, father. Yes, perhaps this establishment cannot give me anything more. Really? Did you really dig through the entire archive in 3 measly days? He almost laughed out loud, considering my statement bragging. You should work for us, in the administration, as a secretary, maybe there wouldn't be any problems. Laugh. Actually, not all of it, I just wanted to know how the shinobi came to be. So as not to look like a fool in my father's eyes, I had to confess, albeit partially. So, did you learn anything interesting? Is it really that hard to get that condescending grin off your face when talking to your own son? I might even get a complex like that. Almost everything, if the information in the scrolls is reliable. Father, please tell me, have you ever heard of the Nawaki clan? And why not? He is the Hokage. He should obviously be interested. Nawaki? Let me think, and he made such a cute and thoughtful face that I don't even doubt how my mother could have fallen for him. Probably not. What, is this some very powerful or important clan? Bummer. My father turned out to be absolutely hopeless. Not to be interested in the history of the place you rule, and then to be surprised that new enemies keep appearing out of nowhere? We know, we can do it, we practice. It's not that. Okay, forget it. He may not be the smartest person in the world, but I'm still glad to see him after 3 days of voluntary confinement. Okay, we'll figure out what you dug up later. He turned to face the exit, as if hinting that it was time to go home, and shook his head with concern. Hiroshi should be back from his mission today, and we'll have a festive dinner at home. Kushina did her best. Mom? I see, then let's go. No need to sit around here. Taking this ambiguous man by the hand, he pulled him towards the exit. By the way, Dad, why does Mom treat me like that? It's a long conversation, to be honest. Let's talk after dinner, okay? I can see from his eyes that he's already planning how to get away for the night shift at the Hokage Tower. He won't wait. Agreed. So, shall we go? And tugged at his hand, as little children usually do to bring a smile to a worried face. Went. He picked me up in his arms and instantly moved to our house, from the kitchen window of which acrid black smoke was pouring. Well, Mom, you are clearly a God-given cook. Having burst into the kitchen, having covered a couple of dozen meters in a matter of seconds, we found a very strange picture. Pale Kushina was lying unconscious on the floor of the smoky kitchen, and a frying pan with pieces of